Councillor Adam Stokes, the Chairman, I will be chairing the meeting today, and Councillor Skinner has very graciously said he will assist me in the role of Vice Chairman. Can I remind you all that the audio-visual feed of the formal public meeting is being broadcast via the County Council website, and your comments will remain accessible online as the meeting recording remains on the Council website. And with this in mind, I'd like to welcome members of the public and press who are watching the meeting via the internet. I'll also remind members we're not expecting a fire alarm, and so if you do hear the fire alarm, please use the fire exits which are behind you. Wait in the car park for instructions, but hopefully we won't have any need to. Welcome to the Executive Councillor present, which is Councillor Boothroyd. Do you have any announcements, Councillor Boothroyd?
No, nothing at this time.
Thank you very much. Andrew, as for the exec, do you have any announcements?
Nothing, thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Can I also remind members that the hearing loop for the meeting is active, so things will be able to be heard. Can I also ask that mobiles and laptops, iPads, etc. are on silent? When invited to speak, please make sure that the microphone is switched on so that the press and public can hear you. Requests to speak will be collated by the Vice Chairman, so please raise your hands clearly so that they can be collated. Apologies for absence. Emily, do we have any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chairman. We have apologies from Councillor Hall and we have Councillor Dyer as a replacement. Apologies from Councillor Stokes and we have Councillor Skinner as a replacement. Councillor Carrington and we have Councillor Sear as a replacement, and we have Councillor Macy and we have Councillor Wotton as a replacement. Thank you.
Thank you. Declarations of members' interests. Members may make declarations at this time or at any point during the meeting. Do members have any interests to declare? Seeing none, so we will progress to the minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of August. This is to confirm that the minutes for the last meeting are a correct record. Unless there are any amendments that wish to be made, I am happy to propose the minutes. Do I have a seconder for those minutes? Thank you, Councillor Dyer. So, seeing no objections or no dissent, otherwise I'll take those as accepted. Emily, have we had any considerations for call-ins?
No, none received, Chairman.
Thank you. Any consideration of councillor calls for action?
None received, Chairman.
Thank you. Moving to the first substantive item of the agenda, which is the Treasury Management Performance 24-25, October 1st to June 30th, 2024. The Scrutiny report can be found at pages 15 to 48 of the agenda pack. The report provides an overview of the Treasury management activities and performance for quarter 1 24-25 up to the 31st of June 24. It compares these activities against the Treasury Management Strategy and Annual Investment Strategy for 24-25 and commissioning on the 11th of March 24. The report fulfills the reporting requirements as set out in the SIPFA Code of Practice for Treasury Management, which the Council adheres to. I will pass over to Karen Tong, the Treasury Manager, to present the report. Over to you, Karen.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, everyone. As the Chairman said, this is the first update report for Treasury for the year of 24-25, reporting to the end of June. Admittedly, we are nearly at the end of the second quarter and economic data's moved on, so I'll try and incorporate a bit of that as well. The report you'll see follows the same usual path that I structure, which starts with interest rates and economy, looks at investments, borrowing, and then any other items. So starting off with interest rates and the economy for the quarter, it's been pretty much in line with forecast at the time of strategy, to be honest. Base rate was kept on hold throughout the period at 5.25%. It has been reduced on the 1st of August, first cut in the reducing cycle to 5%. and rates are expected to be 4% at the end of the financial year. So we're on a downward cycle path for rates. When the Bank of England cut the rate in August, they did reiterate that they are on a cautionary approach still, and still looking at inflation and the effects and stuff. So we think the rate cuts are going to be slower than first indicated earlier on. The markets think that they're going to be 3.75 by the end of the year. Link, our Treasury advisors, think it's going to be more cautionary in that, but time will tell. That the next cut in rates is expected in November, so we shall see if we are right. Long-term rates were flat over the quarter. However, they were increased by about 20 or 30 basis points early on in the year due to gilt issuance and the extent of it. But they're still, given that, they're still forecast to fall on a falling trajectory along with short-term rates by 20 to 40 basis points by the end of the year. The detail of the interest rates and forecasts you can find in your pack on page 23. The economy is very tepid at best. It grew 0.6 in the first 3 quarters of the year. CPI inflation did move back to the target level of 2%. Rose again slightly, but that rise was less than expected. So it looks like they've got a handle on CPI, although they're still monitoring certain types of inflation, like service inflation. And the government has still got a tricky balancing act to keep inflation under control, but at the same time not to damper growth too much. And of course, we're all expecting a new budget in next month, October, from a new government. So that may have an impact moving ahead. So moving on to investments, the average value of investments over the quarter was 260 million, about 20 million lower than the previous year. The weighted average maturity of the investments increased to 115 days. This is a deliberate action, as I've been locking into long-term investments before the rates fall. And this strategy has led to a 5.49% return for the quarter, which was over the benchmark by 0.5% and higher than the benchmarking groups by some margin. Detail of the investments in the portfolio you can find on page 29 of the pack. Moving on to borrowing, the carry forward of borrowing requirement underspend from the previous year has brought borrowing requirement to just nearly 112 million for this present year. But this hasn't been adjusted yet for any target changes, rephasing the programme, or any underspends. So that will come down. The adjustment to the debt liability benchmark for 24-25 for these underspends and rephasing and voluntary revenue provision in the previous year has moved us from a underborrowed position of 22.5 to an overborrowed position of 33.7. So this is showing that we probably won't need to borrow again for the capital financing this year. But again, these figures will be revised at budget setting time in November, and taking into account any rephasing target changes. So that this benchmark is closely monitored and reviewed. If we didn't borrow any more debt this year, then our level would be 449 million at a cost of just below 3.7%. But again, the detail for the borrowing you can find on page 47 of the pack. And then just finally, a quick update on the Treasury Management Knowledge and Skills Framework. Members may recall that this was a requirement of the new SIPFA code in 2021. and we reported that we would be working on this in this year and issue it. It's a formulation of the requirement to ensure that all those involved in Treasury, members and officers, have the skills and knowledge required for their role and hence receive the appropriate training. Just a quick update that competencies has been formulated for all the roles identified, and the next step is to sort of ascertain present skills and knowledge of those involved, probably by issuing questionnaires, so that the appropriate training plans can be developed, and that's hopefully going to be in October after the whole framework has been reviewed and approved. So that will be happening in the last half of the year, and training hopefully will be arranged by the end of the financial year where identified is required. So that's all I've got to say. Thanks. Thank you, Chairman. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. Do members have any questions? Councillor Dyer.
Thank you, and thank you for presenting the report. I suppose my question actually stemmed from the last bit that you said. What's the point in doing member surveys and then putting in place a training programme for the new financial year when we're a few months out from elections? Should that be something that you put on hold until after the new council's formed in May next year and then put on a training for those members? Because things might change between now and then. So if you get something in place now for April, there might be a completely different makeup come May next year. So you're probably best, in my view, to hold fire until that point, so then the training's most effective. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, I can answer that. The framework is including all people involved in Treasury, so it's not just members, it's officers too, and the whole point of the framework is to identify skills and knowledge gaps for all those parties. So, you know, we're going to introduce that. It's running alongside a general knowledge and skills framework for financial strategy as well, which is just for officers. So it's running alongside that. And I would argue that anyone involved in Treasury at this point in time needs to know, you know, appropriate skills and so forth. And for OSMB members, it's the skills that you require for scrutinising the report. So I would say that the training's not going to be onerous. It's not the same as the pension fund skills and knowledge programme. I know they have a similar framework. It won't be as onerous as that. It's just identifying the competencies and skills that you need to scrutinise effectively, and then probably sort of meet those, if you don't feel you've got those at the moment, to meet those with some internal training, so it's not, you know, too onerous for yourself.
Just, Chairman, just if I may, I see Councillor Lee put a hand up. All I'd say is I totally agree with you on that. I accept that officer point of view, but from what you've just said, you're going to put a survey out in October for them to put together a training plan for it to be in place for the new financial year when we're in purdah. So you're going to do a lot of work to put this together for it then not to be implemented. That was my point, but point made anyway. Thanks, Chairman.
Councillor Brockway.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks ever so much for this report. I really like the way you put the strategy boxes in. I find that incredibly helpful. Thank you. It gives a much better picture of what's happening. I have two questions, if I may, please. One is on page 18. And it's not a very detailed question, but I noticed that there seemed to be counterparty stability in the quarter that we're looking at. And I wondered if is that an indication of wider economic stability, or is it something that is just random with our particular counterparties? So that's my first question.
Yeah, the counterparties have been stable, and they have been stable all through the lockdown COVID period as well. And I think that stems from the regulation that was brought in for banking sector a few years ago now, where they all have to meet certain thresholds of reserves and so forth, and after the credit crunch. And that seems to have settled, banking markets down now, and they've adjusted the requirement if they do falter, who they can first have claim on debt and so forth as well. So there's been a lot of market regulation in the banking sector, and it's resulted in not much change to credit ratings, to be fair, over the period. So.
Thank you. So when, so further on now, same paragraph, Close Brothers goes, is that quite an event then? Is that, because if everybody else is stable, does that suggest something going really wrong there?
Yeah, with Close Brothers, I think they're involved in car finance issue at the moment, along with a lot of other banks, and their credit rating has dropped considerably, in preempting what's going to happen in that space. So it's to do with PCP car financing. I think they've overstretched themselves in that sector. So and the system has worked. It's looked at that. It's put watches and warnings out for those red credit ratings, and hence they've been removed from our lists and stuff. But
Thank you.
I would say we did have some outstanding exposure to them at the quarter, but it's all come back now. So there's no issue for outstanding debt with Close.
That's lovely, thank you. Actually, that sort of detail is very helpful because you see when they're knocked down in their rating, you think, oh gosh, does that make it dodgy, dangerous for us? But when you give the explanation like that, it really puts it in perspective. Thank you. So my second question, Chairman, if I may, is on page 24. Something I'm curious about. The fourth bullet point on page 24 seems to imply that there's going to be an expectation of increased and stronger consumer spending. So, which of course would be good. You've got the various pluses that brings with it. But that doesn't tie in with the stuff that's coming into my sort of news feeds and my own reading and conversation with people in the ordinary person economy, if I can call it that, your day-to-day local economies. Places, things like the travel industry, people are not spending, they're going shorter times, they're not spending as money. The hairdressing industry, they're not taking on apprentices, people are making appointments fewer and further between, and various other examples like that. The day-to-day nitty-gritty on the ground industries, of which of course Lincolnshire I think is made up of about 80% small industry, isn't it, or small businesses. How does that tie in with bullet point 4? Is it possible to give me a bit of information there, please? Thank you.
Yeah, that page is from Link Asset Services, our Treasury advisors. So that's their economic forecasts and comments. Maybe it's what they're hoping is going to happen. That's what the government is trying to boost. Consumer confidence and spending and so forth, but you're right, there's so many variables and stuff going on that time will tell whether that's the case. It's the same with any economic forecast. It's just a forecast, and it's difficult to predict what actually happens.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you. It's a really interesting report and I like how it's laid out. Someone like me who's not an expert, it's very easy to read and to understand, so well done on that, thank you. In terms of the training, I take your points about that and that people will use it to help them with scrutiny, but surely that means it's even more rather than less important that new councillors have that training, because I think it's fairly common knowledge that there will be people who will stand down and be replaced by others, whatever the political mix. So are we saying that the new people that come on are going to have to wait months and months for this training? Because if that was the case, I'd say from the Labour group perspective, I would ask it. I can't see the sense in doing it twice. I really can't, because it must come at a cost. And I would ask how difficult it is to move it back a few weeks, because in the middle of campaigning, I can't see me doing an awful lot of training, not really. And it would feel that that was a waste of resources, unless it's a statutory requirement that you do it in April, I would ask you from our group's perspective to put it back to May or June.
Yeah, we'll have to review the timing of when these things are done. It's not a sort of going to be a one-off exercise. It's going to be a continuous exercise to ascertain, you know, people's skills and knowledge and so forth. So, but I'll take your point on board and review. I mean, nothing's set in stone yet. Certainly for officers, it's got to, you know, follow that path. But we'll have to decide, and I was going to take advice from Nigel on how to engage with members about how to do the next stage. So I take your point, but at the end of the day, I'd like everybody involved in the area for scrutiny to be, you know, upskilled as much as they can to perform their scrutiny duties. So it's how we capture everybody and at what time and the frequency and so forth. But
with your indulgence, Chair, and I would gently persuade my group to do any training, but to get people out in April, they're going to be out pounding streets, they're not going to be doing training, and even I can't make them do that.
Andrew, you wish to come in?
Yeah, just add a bit further to what Karen's said, really. So obviously you asked about statutory requirement. I have to statutorily respond as part of being the Council Section 151 officer that we've complied with particular codes during a particular year. So with it being effective from that date, I have to take a view on that. But I think it's a fair point that as the new council coming in May 25 will be getting a broader induction process, of which we need to ensure things like this and budget setting and budget scrutiny are key parts of that. So we'll take that on board and try and work out how we can obviously balance meeting the requirements of the code against obviously that timing pressure. So yeah, thank you.
Councillor Dilks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. I just wanted to concur with what colleagues have said about the report. Thank you very much for it and the way it's presented. And I think it does give us some confidence that we're in safe hands economically. But I just wanted to pick up one point, and it is on page 18, that doesn't seem to have been picked up, and it is the paragraph that says the council's return on the 30th of June exceeded other councils in the Link benchmarking group by some margin, and was above the expected return for councils in the chosen risk profile. So I'll just say thank you, congratulations, well done, and that does give us some confidence. Thank you.
Councillor Skinner.
Thank you, Chair. How are we mitigating the risks associated with the potential slower and smaller rate cuts predicted by the Link Asset Services? Thank you.
Well, it's only a risk when you're looking at borrowing, I suppose, because slower rate cuts for investment purposes is a benefit. But in the borrowing concept, it is a falling market already. So any borrowing that's done would be targeted at the last point of the financial year, you know, to benefit from the lowest rate achievable. And as you can see with the borrowing levels anyway, that's all dependent on the debt liability benchmark now and what that's showing us. So, we've got one eye on whether we actually need to borrow anything in the first place, and we keep an eye on that. So you can't really do a lot with the pace of how rates fall. But like I say, the risk is mitigated because you benefit from the return on your investments not falling so much. So that's really how.
Thank you. I've got two questions, and then if other members have any questions, please indicate. Given the, shall I say, press murmurings around the current government, shall I say, spending priorities and what they are purporting to do and potentially borrow money, is there a risk to the nation's sovereign rating reducing given those policies? And secondly, and I know this is a bit crystal ball, Karen, so I know you can't do this predict this with absolute certainty, but given at the last meeting of the Bank of England, they were projected at that time to cut rates and didn't. What is the likelihood, do you think, in November that they will actually cut rates? Or is that very much, as they have already said, sort of dependent on where inflation is and government spending? Thank you.
Well, in terms of the sovereign rating, I think that it's likely that not to fall again, as long as the markets are happy with the spending plans and the robustness of the government's plans going forward. Markets get upset when they can't see a clear plan and so forth. So as long as, you know, that's the case, then I think we'll be okay in that regard. And the likelihood if November cut is pretty much certainty with the markets. They seem that there was a chance that it could be cut in September last week, and it wasn't. And with the falling trajectory, the results being forecast, GDP seeming to be okay with positive numbers coming out, and inflation, service inflation seeming to be dropping, unemployment seems to be dropping. You know, the likelihood, the markets are pretty certain that there will be a cut in November. How much is debatable, whether it's 0.25 or 0.5, we'll have to see. But yeah, I would say we're pretty much 60-70% certain it will be a cut in November.
Thank you for that. Before I go to the recommendation, do members have any questions at final time of asking? Seeing none, I will go to the recommendation. And our actions are that we review the report and agree any additional comments to be passed on to the Executive Council for Resources Communication in relation to this item, which we have certainly done, which have been captured by the Scrutiny Officer. I am therefore happy to propose the report. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Sear. All those in favour? That looks unanimous, but I will ask, any against, any abstentions? Seeing none, to item 8, which is, sort the paper out. Update on IT services project portfolio. This report can be found between pages 49 and 58 of the agenda pack. The report offers the board a high-level overview of the portfolio commissioned through the LCC IT department, including key projects within it. It provides an update on the IT project portfolio, repeating the exercise from the previous board meetings, most recently in February 24, to highlight progress of both individual projects and the portfolio as a whole. The report will be presented by Tom Baker, Chief Information Officer. So over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Tom Baker. I'm the new Chief Information Officer. I've been in post for 4 months. I'm very pleased to meet you all. So, as Chair has said, the report follows the same format that was presented in February 2024, and I'd be interested in comments on that format and the validity of that going further forwards. So I think the first thing that is important to reference is there's been a significant period of change within the IT function. That's manifested itself in a new management team. So myself and 3 other members of that team have come into post over the last 6 months. We come from a range of different backgrounds. One of us from central government, myself from the utilities sector, although previously I was a CIO at another local authority. Richard, who's here with me today, joins from Boots, and we've also got a new cyber security lead who joins us from a big educational software company. So a significant investment, I think, with regards to new skills, and hopefully we're bringing a new set of directions and impetus to the department, although clearly it's very early days. So moving on past the executive summary, we are trying to build out a number of improvements, I guess, in the context of both existing delivery and an understanding of the broader portfolio. We've taken a view across the structure of the department. We are working hard to define more efficient and expedient ways of working with the wider organisation, and these initiatives have manifested themselves through the development of new governance boards and removal of superfluous activity, a real focus on work specification, making sure that we have really clear requirements from the organisation and that those are taken and translated into solutions that can support the wider council and efficiency agenda. We've been working on the management of our portfolio and looking at the controls and processes that we've got in place to ensure a more expedient manner of control of that. What we've also done is look at reporting. Transparency, I think, is something that is clearly very important with respect to the portfolio, and we're driving improvements working with Serco on how we are communicating progress to stakeholders across the piece. In terms of key performance indicators, this is something that again has been referenced in previous reports. Obviously there's a significant reliance on Serco at this point in time as our outsourced IT provider, and there has been reporting on KPIs from Serco in this report previously, and as members can see, there has been again adherence with that KPI over the reporting period. Moving on, we've got 33 live projects with a further 3 on hold until dependencies are completed, with the vast majority of those projects having a green status, so progressing to the baselined time agenda, baseline costs, and also quality stipulations. We have 4 amber and 1 red, and we can talk about those in more detail. Each project that isn't, as I say, green has some more detail provided. Project completion, I'm pleased to report there that we are seeing an uptick in the level of projects that are being completed. And we can see there as we move through the year within the graph that we are seeing a number of projects move to a completed status. We've been looking at trying to understand the type of projects that we're working on, and the reason we've been doing that is to bring things together and to think about efficiencies, so making sure that we've got the right teams of people moving from one set of related activities to the next, so interjecting some intelligence in terms of the portfolio management. And as members can see, we are moving those projects and grouping those into projects with key organisational benefit, might be a new IT system, projects that importantly improve the cyber security of the organisation. And this is something that is hugely important, and no doubt members will have seen continued news and information about other local authorities that might have struggled from a cyber perspective, the NHS, and of course the private sector. I think the CrowdStrike instance, although not directly cyber related, was something obviously that gained international headlines and caused significant issues. So continue to have that strong focus on cybersecurity, which of course is an area that is constantly evolving. There is no room or latitude for taking your eye off the ball on this thing as we look to support and secure a working environment for staff and members. There's also quite a significant piece of work at this point in time, and a number of projects that within the portfolio that relate to obsolescence. IT equipment, like anything, whether that's the car that you drive or the washing machine that you use at home, has a finite lifespan. That lifespan is driven by the hardware itself, but also the maintenance and support of that hardware by vendors. It's imperative that we have infrastructure that is supported and that receives things like security patches to ensure that we've got a strong cyber stance going further forwards, and that is a significant piece of work within the portfolio at this point in time. And finally, an element with respect to software and life cycle management. We've then got some detail, which I'm not proposing to go through with respect to certain key projects. We are working at a high level with respect to a new card payment system, which obviously is critical for our colleagues within the culture function. And you'll see there that that project is red as a result of some issues with respect to signing a contract with the new EPOS, the electronic point of sale vendor. I'm pleased to report that since this report has been written, that contract has now been signed, and we are working with the directorates and stakeholders to build a full plan with respect to the deployment of that system. Teams, meetings, facilities on track, third-party sharing and collaboration. This is something where we've seen significant progress. I think over the last few months, what is vitally important is that colleagues and officers can collaborate with other organisations, be that the NHS, third sector, providers, and what we've been doing is providing a secure mechanism by which colleagues can confidently share information in the knowledge that that information will be shared in a secure manner. Other projects, e-signature, we're making significant progress on that. What that will allow the organisation to do is move away from, in some cases, ink-based signatures or using technology in a way that's probably not appropriate, and the solution will allow the use of digital signature to sign contracts and other things. So that will be a significant improvement to where we are now. It'll be more traceable. It'll provide a greater level of audit, and also it will help facilitate and drive efficiency improvements. Then a number of projects with respect to cyber. We are refreshing our vulnerability management tooling that will allow us to take a view across the council's network and understand in more detail where we've got issues that will need to be remediated. We are working on backup infrastructure, taking advantage of new tooling that will allow us absolute confidence that we are backing up information and data in a better way. So there is a lot going on, and that is all against the backdrop of the new IT service model. So members will be aware that we have a contract with Serco for the provision of our IT services, and that runs until April 2026. We are progressing with the tendering activity to replace that contract. What we've done through that process is take a view of the strengths and weaknesses that are there within it, and we are moving forwards with what is a very significant contract, obviously a large organisation here, and we are at the SQ stage and the ITT has been published. I think it's fair to say that there's been very significant interest in that, although clearly that process is ongoing, and we will move through, hopefully with a view to contract signature in June 2025, with then the provision of a transitionary period from that date to the end of the Serco contract. So, in conclusion, I recommend this report to you. The portfolio is progressing well. We are seeing an acceleration of project delivery, and we are also mindful of the state and nature of our project base with regards to the contract that we have with Serco and how we will provision that ongoing service into the future. Thank you.
Thank you for the report. Councillor Kendrick.
Thank you, Chairman. My question relates to e-signature, although I think it's been partially answered actually in the presentation. The only thing that caught my eye, and I don't know whether you're able to speak on this particular aspect, but it's the line that says unapproved solutions are often used in lieu of a corporate solution, and then it goes on to mention there's a risk to LCC. I don't know if in this forum whether you're able to elaborate on that or not.
I'm not sure it's one for this forum, but I'm more than happy to spend some time on this subject and indeed others. But we need to have in place a robust set of policies. And what I am aspiring to do, and there's a very clear steer here, we want to enable the business of the organisation through the provision of the right tools we don't want to block or hinder people. We want to make sure they've got access to the right tool for the right job at the right price, and moving to that e-signature solution corporately, I think will drive significant efficiencies and make people's lives easier, and therefore obviously reduce the need to be using other solutions which we may take the view around actually blocking and removing from people. So hopefully that partly answers the question.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'm aware that e-signature is used in lots of situations now in regards to contracts. So thanks very much for that. Thank you.
Councillor Brockway.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure, I mean, first of all, thank you for the report. Again, easy to read and very informative. Thank you. I'm not sure this is a fair question, given that you've only been here a few months, but I'll ask, I've got two questions, if I may. I noticed that you're talking about avoiding piecemeal purchasing, which is absolutely brilliant, because that has been an issue for a long time. And sort of two heads of IT ago, possibly even before your time, Andrew, we had issues with not only with hardware not linking between departments, but departments in areas of service buying software which was incompatible with the rest of the council. So my question on that part of it would be, will this be creating a cohesion in the purchase of the software as well as the hardware? Because it was quite a problem with officers coming in, not being able to log on for anything up to 1 or 2 days at a time in different departments, and frequently not being able to log on for an hour or more in the mornings. I mean, the loss of man hours was absolutely staggering. So I absolutely support your move to make the whole thing cohesive and streamlined, but I just wonder, how are you going to deal with software and the legacy stuff? How much of it is still left, and has it improved? Not fair. You've been here 4 months, so I don't know how much of that you can answer. And I have one more, Chairman.
So I think we've achieved quite a lot in 4 months, and actually this has been one of the key areas that I've sought to really understand. We're still working through the analysis, but as an organisation, we spend at least £5.4 million on software. Okay, so working with Victoria Eaton, colleagues within the commercial function, to understand whether we've got complete understanding. And probably since you last had the conversation, obviously the tech world has moved on quite significantly. So instead of using individual pieces of software now, we're increasingly using software that's running in the cloud. So you might have heard the phrase software as a service, right? So you don't actually install something, it's running on compute that's sat in data centers that are effectively on the internet. And that introduces another layer of complexity, because you can go out and buy these services yourself. So we're starting to look at that as well by using software that the council has got access to. We are using a lot of cloud services at this point in time. And one of the things I really want to drive is an understanding of the types of software that we're using. So we're doing some work at the minute around our geographical information systems. So this is a sort of capability and technology that allows you to map and use geospatial data. Hugely important within the police directorate, within fire and rescue, resilience, response, all that sort of thing. And we've actually got 7 GIS systems at this point in time. And for me, that means a couple of things, right? Firstly, things have evolved and grown over time. And as a result of that, we're spending quite a lot of money on software. The other thing I think that's probably even more important than that, although clearly that is a significant and meaningful issue, is that we've got people using different systems. In my view, and I think this is sort of understood by the wider organisation, there is a strategic opportunity to build around a common platform. Firstly, it reduces costs, but also it facilitates the right conversations, the right innovation. It allows us to look at data sets across a number of different use cases built around a common platform. So I think we've still got a little way to go, because directorates are still buying software. There is some interaction with the IT function, but there's certainly much more that we could do to build a more meaningful strategic relationship with a smaller number of vendors that would cost us less and get the organisation to a position where we had a much stronger relationship with those vendors and whereby we could actually think about making sure that our requirements and priorities are reflected in the development of that smaller number of systems. So it's still an area of concern, I think, but certainly very much on the radar.
Could I just drill a little bit? Sorry, could you indulge me, Chairman? That's really interesting to know. But if you're going to go more with placing our services in the cloud and elsewhere, how secure are we the day that internet goes down? How can we carry on? Because we have had a situation here once where computers were out of use for a whole week because of a cyber attack. And it did highlight considerable weaknesses. You know, people couldn't work because they didn't have phone numbers and things like that. So in the case of an extreme situation, I'm aware I'm talking extreme, if our services are hosted elsewhere, how can we access them in an emergency, in a national or an international emergency? Thank you.
So there's a number of very, very good questions here. No, it's not. No, it's not a pain at all. Actually, it's incredibly useful because these are some of the questions that I've asked coming into the role as well. So it is really critical. And you're right. You know, if we've got our compute in the cloud, then what becomes important is whether we can access it or not. So there's a number of really key technologies that we need to consider in that context. Firstly, if you work remotely, use something called a virtual private network. That allows you to connect from your laptop or phone or desktop through a secure tunnel that carries the communications from that device to a system through an encrypted pipe. Okay, so in essence, a secure link. We need to do more with regards to the resilience of that critical system. We have some 4,000 users of that capability every single day, and of course, what we've got is a highly mobile workforce. We've got a workforce that has really changed, I think, quite fundamentally as a result of COVID. We've got hybrid working as an example. The other thing that's really important is that the council has a wide area network, okay? So connections and routing that connect all of the different sites together. And from that network, there's breakout to the internet, okay? So it's important, and again, this is an area that I'm looking at the minute, that we have resilience with regards to both connections to the internet, but also connections to some of our key cloud providers. The primary one being Microsoft and their Azure service. So we'll be continuing to look at that, and there will be recommendations that are forthcoming. But I would very much concur and agree with you. There is evidence, and there are organisations out there that have been hit by cyber attacks, as an example, or have been hit by high-order failures within their network infrastructure that have been paralysed for a significant period of time. So this is an area that we're both looking at now, and I think there'll probably be much more on the report when it comes back next month, and it's something that we're thinking about from a new contract perspective. But I would like to reassure people that we've done significant work around cybersecurity over the past few months and years, and that things like firewalling and perimeter security are in place.
Before you do, Andrew, you wish to come in?
Oh, sorry.
So it might be more relevant if Councillor Brockway's got a further question to come in after it. I think I just wanted to add some context to it, really, because obviously Tom and Richard are both new, and I think as you've heard in some of the responses, obviously the technology's a rapid advancement, isn't it? It's always changing, and I don't think, you know, in your first question you articulated, didn't you, that I don't think the council's always moved fast enough to be able to keep up with that pace, or we've not always necessarily had the right skilled individuals to help us get to that place either, and that's obviously one of the reasons why we took the decision of creating a completely brand new and different leadership team to the one we've done before, and clearly we are making rapid progress in that space. There's a bit of an assurance from me, really, that we see the challenges that you're talking about, and we are doing our utmost to invest in that and make sure that we're always on the front foot as we can be. Yeah.
Thank you. On my last, and thank you so much for letting me ask all these questions, Chairman. It's again, it's on page 57, actually. You mentioned about maximum estimated funding of 53 million for what is essentially not the core projects. How critical to your overall vision is that 53 million? I know it's an estimation and it's a maximum estimation. So how crucial is it to the core of what you're doing? Is it internal, external funding? And what happens if you don't get it? How does it affect you? Thank you.
So again, fantastic questions. And of course, the way we've looked at the total contract value for the new strategic technology partnerships is we've looked at the level of expenditure that gets made with Serco at this point in time. We've also looked at not just the base expenditure, but also what we spend in terms of projects. Okay, so there's two elements of how we've come to the 140. The final element, which is a big shift from where we are now, is that the council needs to refresh equipment. And that is really important that we remain safe for all the reasons that I've described. The current contract is a bit piecemeal because, you know, we sort of decide when to refresh stuff and there's ebbing and flowing and all of the rest of it. The new contract will move us to more of an evergreen state. So there'll be an emphasis through the contract terms on the new supplier that they continue to maintain as a supported state for all of our infrastructure. Okay, and that will mean the removal of a significant overhead, I think, on the IT function, and it will get us to a point where we're talking about more of an outcome-based contract rather than sort of what we've got at the minute. And obviously we can't go into too much detail there, but that conceptually is where we are. We've also then looked at the sort of project spend that comes in from different directorates, and that has started to create that £53 million figure. Now, what is clearly very important is that any expenditure on any project, whether it's IT, digital or other, has a very clear investment case associated with it, and that goes through necessary scrutiny and governance before we make that commitment. So this is saying to the market, we think that this is going to be potentially the level based on historical areas of spend that we might need going further forwards. But what I would say is that, and members may have seen this in the press, we're standing on almost a precipice. It's a pivotal moment now with the implementation of artificial intelligence, right? And it's well worth doing some reading on this. AI is not just going to transform the way that we deliver services, it's potentially going to transform society, and it's going to transform the way of work. And the use of automation, the use of intelligence will be commonplace over the next decade, i.e. the term of this contract. So we need to think about that, and we need to think about that in the context of the efficiency agenda for the organisation and how we structure ourselves going further forward. So in terms of the vision, that's a large part of it, but we need to be cognizant of the organisational controls that are there to safeguard us in the context of spending public money. So it is a large part of the vision. We will need to adapt, we will need to change, and we will need to think about potentially doing things quite differently over the coming years, and we need to move with care. I would advocate on this because we're starting to potentially use information and data in a way that we're not at this point in time. And I think it's also vital that as an organisation we understand the importance of information and data in the context of understanding demand, understanding the causes of that demand, but also in the context of the provision of services. So there's a lot of work to do there, and this contract will be structured to allow us to embrace those opportunities, but also to do it in a safe way.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, welcome. Welcome to you and to Richard and your other colleagues. So hope you enjoy working here. I've just got some very succinct points. I don't pretend I can do IT, but I don't have a huge depth of knowledge around it. But I think everyone recognises that since COVID, we've just got so much, a greater reliance on IT, and we've changed the way that we do things. So it's really important that we all make use of that. And I really welcome you all coming and having put in a fresh eye over the way that we do things, and I think that will be really positive. I totally agree with you about security. I work within the NHS, and when there was the cyber outrage, I think it was about 2016 or 7, I was in gynecology clinics then. Our appointments went down, our scanning machines weren't usable. There was just no end to it. It was absolutely awful. So I agree with you, just how vital that is. Our computers seem to have come on since then. We've now got online prescribing and stuff like that. We do our drugs charts on computers. So I'm sure we have moved forward, but they're still a bit slow. They're not the best. I wanted to point something else out as well. This might be a bit like the Emperor's New Clothes, but am I the only person who can't... There are graphs, the top one on page 52, all of them from page 53 to 56 and page 57. They're so small I can't read them. They're absolutely no good to me. And I thought, will I be the only one you asked about comments about? It's a great report, but honestly, that I can't even see those.
I apologise.
No, it's fine.
We will make sure that they're much larger in future, and possibly there's a table associated with it as well. So we'll present the.
I'd ask
the
if
data.
anyone can read them, if it's just my eyes, my old eyes. I just wanted to say, I think the equipment that we get as members, I think these are great little machines. I've worked in other environments, and they're certainly these are as good as what they've got in Westminster. That they're really portable. I accept they probably do need updating, but I do think as well, and I'll just say from my group's perspective, I don't think that anybody should be printing off agendas. It's not environmentally sustainable, and it's not necessary. We've got good machines. They're really lightweight. You don't need to print off agendas. And I do tell my team that. And I would say that when you bring in new laptops, if and when you do, I would suggest that people come in and have the training and then get the laptop, because I think people need to be persuaded around that. I think some people you'll never persuade, but I personally don't think that... I hate it when you see full council agendas and they're like that thick and they've printed off so many. That is such a waste of paper and such a damaging thing. So I would suggest that, but I do think that we need another offer of some IT training, and perhaps link it in with getting a new computer, so that there's an incentive to do the training, let's say.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, it always works, doesn't it? A bit of carrot, doesn't it? But firstly, thank you for the comments with respect to the hardware. I think I've been impressed as well coming into the organisation, and I think it's definitely one of the better points with respect to the service. But just to pick up on some of the points around training, hugely important, I think. And I think we've made a bit of progress with the tech bar upstairs. I'm not sure if you've ever had a chance to frequent the tech bar. They do have some chocolate in there, which is also another bit of carrot, isn't it? Or probably not that healthy. But it's nice, right? It's a welcoming environment. There's some people in there that have got, what appear to be excellent customer-facing skills. And I think what is important, things like SharePoint, the tools that you use, how do you store information, data, especially with what's coming around AI, there's more that we need to do from a training perspective. So many of these capabilities will enhance personal productivity. And what we want is people focused on the services that matter and being as efficient as possible, and not, wading through forms or whatever it may be. And AI can help quite significantly in these areas. So it's not just training about the hardware and potentially sort of, the office suite as we know it, but it's thinking about some of these new things. So it would be, I think, quite a sound investment to think about the expansion of the tech bar service. I think there would be very significant returns associated with it. It would help improve people's confidence and their general feeling of well-being, and there would be an opportunity to think about delivering services in different ways.
Just to come back on that, just thinking about it, perhaps before one of the upcoming full council meetings, you could have a stall at the front there, because that's an environment where all the members pretty much come in. And if you had a stall saying, right, this is what we can offer you, then people would have a greater knowledge about that, and you might get a really good take-up.
Yeah, we shall definitely look to do that. I think the other thing, and the offer is always here, if members are interested in AI, Internet of Things, anything else for that matter that you may have read about, please drop me a note and say, look, can we have a chat about this stuff? Because I think it's important that we all understand what's coming, that we have a conversation about it, and that we link it through to directorate plans, corporate strategies, and the wider efficiency agenda.
perhaps between you and I, we can arrange a training session. I've only got 4 group members, but I'm sure maybe Phil's and maybe whatever, you know, arrange a session where, you know, this is what we can offer you and we can book you into this, this and this.
Yeah.
I think that would be really useful.
So look, let's do that. And of course, the offer there is for everybody. So we can talk about the offer today, and what we can also do is maybe even some demonstrations as well as to what we think might be coming down the track from a technology perspective and how that we think will integrate to the provision of services. So yeah, more than happy, very keen to do that. So we'll get something set up. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I've got a number of questions, unfortunately, Tom. And there are, for ease, I'll reel them off. If you need anything repeated, please ask. I think I asked this in pre-meet, but is it possible we could have some more information on the projects that have a TBC on Path to Green and how that will be achieved so they're back on track, as it were? Secondly, can we have some more details on the projects that are currently red and amber and what caused those? Because whilst it says they are where they are, it'd be interesting to know what's caused that. Thirdly, could officers give us a flavour of what possibly the 53 million could be spent on or could be used for, to sort of elaborate a bit on Councillor Brockway's question? And again, to elaborate on one that Councillor Brockway mentioned, what support is needed either from a officer perspective or a member perspective for IT to achieve a more strategic relationship with vendors and to sort of stop the specific department saying, well, I've bought that piece of software, but then it doesn't integrate with another piece of software in another department. Because to use Councillor Lee's example of the National Health Service, I have appointments in Nottingham, and Nottingham cannot speak to Lincolnshire, which in the 21st century is, to be blunt, quite farcical. That is what I don't want to happen here at LCC, is for someone to say, well, we have a piece of software, it works great for us, but it can't speak with another department. And finally, I might sound a bit of an old fuddy-duddy when I say this, but AI concerns me greatly, and what it could do or could not, or the risks it poses, because I see so much risk around AI and what it could be abused to do or could be manipulated to do through cyberware, cyber attacks, and becoming sort of over-reliant on cloud-based services, AI services. We're opening ourselves up as an organisation to a world of hurt if we do this wrong. And also, I can't speak for other people's residents, but I know many of my residents, if you said, oh, do you want a human being, an email address, or an AI bot at the end of the line, they want a human being. They don't want to involve AI because there's a fear of, is it actually usable? Is it helpful? The best example I can give is you get the chatbot sometimes when you phone up, and the worst one I've ever had to deal with is the Department of Work and Pensions. It is absolutely useless. It takes more time. You sit there, and you actually then can't get. You then need a human anyway. But no, I appreciate I've asked you a lot, Tom. But thank you for it.
There is quite a lot there, so I'm going to cover the latter questions first, and then I'm going to have a little pause and ask Richard to pick up some of the detailed questions around the individual projects. So we're in absolute agreement, because it does scare me as well, the use of artificial intelligence, and I think yeah, it's a very adroit comment that we need to do things carefully. Artificial intelligence can be biased, it can be wrong, it depends on what the tool is trained upon and the data that is used to facilitate its operation. And you're exactly right in that regard. What is vitally important is that we are composed, structured, and we are focused in terms of where we think we can actually drive benefit from this, and that we're doing it in the right way, cognizant of all of the risks going further forwards. And like I say, what we do, it needs to be business case driven. So hopefully that provides a degree of support for what you've just said. I think the other thing with respect to bots is, yeah, they are pretty bad, right? I'm not going to sit here and say that these things are a panacea, because historically they haven't been. And I think what's also important to understand is that this is a rapidly evolving set of technologies, and that I expect bots to continue to develop at almost an existential rate, or exponential rate, sorry, we will see significant improvements around these things going further forwards. And I think from an organisational perspective, we don't want to be at the bleeding edge of things. That's a very clear steer. That's, of course, not what we're about. But what we want to do is see what is working well elsewhere and consider that in the context of the agenda that we've got. So those, I think, were the latter 2 points. You had a question about the 54 million. Sorry, could you refresh my memory?
Of course, can. Yeah, what possible projects could you see that money being used for?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So we've talked about artificial intelligence. Clearly, there'll be a cost of looking to deploy these sorts of capabilities, and that will be a potential area. And again, let's not forget that this is over a 10-year period. There will be projects that relate to existing systems. There will be projects that relate to moving revisions of those. There will be projects that relate to automating more of the things that we do. We have a very significant cohort, I guess, of officers, and we have a very large and complex process base. We do a lot of things for a lot of people, and I think there is a significant opportunity to look at that. Where we've got processes that operate outside of line of business systems at this point in time, that touch multiple people, that touch multiple systems, where we're using spreadsheets, which again is a cause for concern given what you've articulated in terms of sort of data management, where we've got processes reliant on macros or databases that have been set up by people that might have left the organisation, there is an opportunity to bring these things together. That will deliver a number of benefits. Firstly, hopefully return on that investment through operating more efficiently. The second big thing that I think it provides us, and again, you sort of back to the comments you made around AI, by automating processes and codifying things, we've got the opportunity to build out things like audit logs. Who did what, when, and why? Really important, I think, as an organisation. Where we've got processes, we also need to make sure that they're documented, that we're happy with those processes, that we have a mechanism by which we can assess those processes on a regular basis that allows us to adapt to changes in statute or direction or policy or whatever it may be. So there is a significant opportunity, I think, there around some of those things. With respect to the interoperability agenda, again, that's something that I think we really need to focus on. There'll be constant need to be collaborating across the public sector going further forwards. Things like Gov Wi-Fi. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of Gov Wi-Fi, but effectively it's a government Wi-Fi service. So as a member of the council or as a member of the police or as a member of the NHS, you can go into a public sector building that's operating Gov Wi-Fi and connect to that Wi-Fi infrastructure. So there's things like that as well that we want to drive forward. But again, it's going to be business case led. So whilst clearly the £54 million does sound like and is a huge amount of money over that 10-year period, given the scale and size of the organisation and some of the opportunities that lie in front of us, then I think there's a real opportunity to spend it wisely and on things that will deliver a return. Sort of final point I would like to make picks up on comments that other councillors have made. Interoperability of systems is hugely important. Building out the right APIs, application programming interfaces, the right data pipelines to allow us to use information and data that might be held within a database within a particular system, I think is going to be increasingly more important as we seek to become better informed, more intelligent around the provision of services. And again, that's going to require some work, potentially some investment. Hopefully there's an opportunity to offset that as a result of expenditure on existing software. And of course, that 5.4 million is a per annum cost. So over that 10-year period of time, we'll be spending another £54 million on software. So bringing all of these things together, and really it's a bit of a line in the sand at this point in time, we're obviously cognizant that over that 10-year period, there's going to be a lot of change. And we want to make sure that we've got the provision within that contracted base to be able to facilitate responding to that. So hopefully if that's answered the latter few questions. I'll ask Richard to chip in with some of the detail on the path back to green.
Sure, thank you, Tom. Good morning, Chairman, and good morning, everybody else. As Tom said, I'm very pleased to be here this morning, very pleased to meet you. So if I come back to the earlier questions, in the time that I've been around, I've done a lot of work to look at where projects aren't green, what is the underlying cause of that, are we clear on it, who is looking at that particular issue, and what do we need to do to resolve it. And I think that starts to show through some common themes that then we can look at as risks to future delivery, and we can start to understand how we avoid those risks in the future. I think as a general comment, looking at the projects that weren't green at the time when we wrote the report, there is something around the timing of decision making. We have at the moment a model where we deliver a lot of our project work through our main partner, as we know, with Serco. And I think there's something that we need to be very strong on within the IT department, which is understanding at what point we need to make decisions to keep those projects on track, to keep things delivering efficiently, and also to achieve what I think ultimately is the most important thing for me and Tom, which is keeping the projects to the original plans that we've judged so that we can give the council certainty on when we'll get those business benefits and those values. So I guess that's a general answer to the question. In terms of being a little bit more specific, card payment services, as Tom said, was around signing a contract, and we did take some time as an organisation to make sure that we had the right contractual structure, because what we're doing with that project is putting in place a service that will be used by multiple directorates around the council. So the commercial team, the IT team wanted to make sure that everything was as it needed to be to set that up successfully for the future, but that has caused some impact to the wider project. We have, as I hope members would expect, looked at that in the context of the whole project, and we've looked at other things that we can keep moving forward whilst we've been going through those contractual discussions, and we're now at a point where that contract is signed and we're able to move forward into the implementation stage. So I think, as I said with the general point, it's about understanding exactly what the problem is and how we mitigate it to keep the projects moving forward.
Thank you. Councillor Dilks and then Councillor Marfley.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. I just wonder if I could seek clarification. I've heard a lot about what we're spending on software, and I assume it was a per year figure. I just wonder if you could clarify that figure, because my hearing might not have been right. But it's really picking up on what Jackie said right at the start of what's been a really helpful debate, I think, and I also join colleagues in welcoming you and the investment that we're making in IT for the very reasons that Andrew said earlier. I'm of the generation, I'm afraid, Karen, that still needs paper agendas. Many years ago, sitting in this council, we had a value for money committee, and we were going to be paperless. And we were paperless to the outside world. Everybody had a computer on the desk, but underneath the desk they had a copy of the hard copy of the, like I normally have here today. But I'm of that generation, so we do need to make sure, yes, when we're getting people to use the computers more, that we give them the proper training and more training to sort of convert them and me to the modern day. I've got to say, I remember, and I'm really pleased, Tom, that the AI frightens you, because it certainly frightens most of us. I remember going to seminars years ago when people were talking about this thing that was going to change our lives called the super highway. Do you remember that one? I hadn't got a clue what they were talking about at the time, and I don't think I still have. I go back further. I left school 16 at Robert Patt School in Highcombe, And I remember going into an organisation, and we had a head of we did have a head of IT, and he was he was a big fella, and I didn't think he was that bright. I thought I was probably brighter than he was, and I asked him how he got the job, and he said, well, they were just getting these computers in, and he said they needed somebody who could lift heavy things. I kid you not. So haven't we moved on, and isn't it wonderful that we have, and that we should embrace it? Really, my question was, though, going back to Jackie's very first point is, and you know, the incompatibility between departments sometimes that we perhaps still suffer from is, well, I probably won't ask how did we allow that to happen, but are we stopping that? You know, surely anybody in the organisation who wants to purchase software and spend money on it should get approval from your department, should they not? And is that going to happen? I'll stop there. Thank you.
So the first thing to say that, well, Andrew was very clear through the interview process that there will be a lot of heavy lifting involved, but only metaphorically. And he wasn't wrong. Anyway, it's keeping me fit. A couple of things there, and I think this really sort of gets to the number of maybe where we find ourselves. So there are processes in place that are almost, I feel, a little bit tick box. So there will be consultation with the IT function, but that's usually right at the end of a process. We've gone out, we've spoken to some really clever, very slick software salesmen, and you know what? This is the thing that we really need. And can we have a server for it? Is sometimes how it feels the conversation is going. What I would like to do, and what I think we're making some headway doing, in fact, we had a 2-hour session or a 1.5-hour session yesterday where I presented to Debbie, CLT and the AD community is to make sure that IT are integrated more up front with respect to projects. And that is hugely important. And I think that relates as well to the IT or the digital strategy that we've got in place. We need to understand the portfolio of applications that we've got better. They're not just lines on a spreadsheet and a cost to the organisation. We need to understand what these applications do in more detail. We need to understand how we can interface into these applications, and we need to build out a cogent strategy based around that understanding, and that's what we're seeking to do. So whilst a lot of the focus that I've expended in the last 4 months and what the team have been doing has been focused very much around the sort of infrastructure and cybersecurity piece, we need to do more, and we need to apply that level of energy to what we've got from an applications perspective. And I think we'll be looking to make material changes there, both in terms of the strategy that we've got, but also in terms of the processes and controls that we put in place to make sure that we are managing that application base, that it's not sprawling uncontrollably, that we've not got something called grey IT in the organisation. So this is a term that's used within the sort of tech sector and references the ability of people to go out and procure their own systems that are on the internet, and effectively sort of bypassing corporate controls. So we're looking at that. We're looking at putting in place the necessary elements to bring all of that together, I think. And I think, as I said, with respect to one of the previous questions, what is really important is that the IT and digital function is perceived as an enabler, so that people want to come to us because we'll be able to address and work with them to sort out a business problem issue, deliver a new service, whatever it may be, and not a sort of afterthought. And I think increasingly, as we see the sort of penetration of technology in the way that we've described, these conversations will be critical going further forwards. And I think that's part, to Andrew's point, of why we've got the new management team, and certainly in terms of the relationships that I think we are building now as a team with the wider organisation, we're heading very much in the right direction.
Thank you. Could I just ask, could you just clarify the software spend?
Oh yes, this is an ongoing piece of work, right? So as long as we consider that, we've found an expenditure of about £5.4 million on software. That's everything from operating systems like Windows to Microsoft Word to Teams, all the way through to software online of business systems, like Business World, as an example.
Councillor Marfleet.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, software's an interesting one. We can't live with it and we can't live without it. And actually the only thing that really will fully understand it is AI in the end, because it's getting far too complicated for the majority of people. So, but just coming on to the AI, I know there's a lot of reservation about it. There's one thing, it's here, it's coming, and it ain't going away. And we will adapt to it. But there is a lot of benefits. If you took the world of adults and the NHS, actually, when you really read into it, AI can scan assessments far faster, quicker than any human being. It can avoid mistakes. It can actually, it takes out the boringness of a lot of work. And actually, what's left is better people being able to focus on their job without worrying about it. So actually, I welcome AI. And I think when I've looked more into it, I think it's one of those things we do need to keep abreast of it, because I think it can bring about a lot of good and a lot of savings. And where they put it all into the well, not the NHS, but the hospitals in sort of Taiwan and places, all the nurses all got jittery, but actually they're all better off. And actually they enjoy doing their work because they're not doing all the routine, mundane stuff that actually AI is covering them. And basically it highlights where all the risks are. So there is a lot of benefits. It's out there, it's coming, and I think it's one of those that we need to always be embracing it because of that, and actually make sure that we're aligned to it. What stage and at which point we all jump to it will be the interesting thing, but certainly it's got a place and it's coming. And I think I'm sort of think that all we can do is make sure that we're half aligned to it, because I think there'll be a lot of benefits. In fact, I suspect one of the biggest benefits is when the teacher won't have to read all the homework from all the kids, because AI will scan the whole lot and it'll revolutionise the teacher's kingdom and world. But there we are. So it's not really for any comment, but it's just really for the fact that actually, unlike Tom, I'm more for the fact that we keep it abreast and pay attention to it and start to look at how it can fit and deliver better things for some of our people of Lincolnshire.
So whilst it is in many ways scary, I'm with you, right? I think it's going to transform the world, and it's already here. Having spent the last 5.5 years working for a Singaporean utilities company and spending some time in China and Singapore, you know, there are societies that have embraced this already, and there's some significant fundamental changes. You've got AI passing the bar exam after 4 hours of ingesting data. You know, there's all sorts of phenomenal things that are going to occur off the back of this. And you're right. What we want is people doing the work that matters, and not potentially the more mundane tasks, as critical and as vital as they are. I'll give you a flavour. We did the presentation yesterday, and we had Microsoft along, and we were talking about some of the use cases that already exist in local government, and we talked about something that you've just spoken about, that aggregation of data, making sense of it, providing an output of that. And we talked about that in the context of adult social care and the information that needs to be captured, and we looked at that in terms of 48 side forms that need to be developed. But Lee was there as well, Lee Soderfield, and he said, look, I've got this team of people doing consultations constantly and getting thousands of returns, which is fantastic, right? You want to be able to do that. And he said, I've got teams of people combing through this stuff. I want this now, right? Why can't we do it now? And I think what we need to do is have the debate and the structure about how we move forwards with this, because there'll be some huge areas that, you know, really put us at great risk, but there are other areas that are far more self-contained, where we can start to use this capability in an area with guide rails, if you like, and it requires further debate and scrutiny and all the rest of those things, but that's the sort of thinking that we're putting in place. What can we do here and now? What can we do that's in a safe way? And how does that then facilitate? How does that then link to training? All of the rest of it that allows us to potentially take that much broader view into the future.
Acting Vice Chairman, Councillor Skinner.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Well, I've really enjoyed the debate, and welcome to the energy of this new team. We've dealt a lot with internal customers of the organisation. Sometimes it's the external ones that will challenge you as well. And just like some members are still relying on paper, there's a lot of people out in the public that aren't technology savvy. So we need, amongst all this, to ensure that our people, our services are accessible to all. And anything that we use must be intuitive. And funny enough, I think the AI will actually help that process to make things intuitive. But the biggest challenge is with the large county, where the services are variable. Internet and phone coverage are quite a challenge in places, and how we're going to mitigate that. And it's very difficult to say. And I'll leave that question with you.
Yeah, I mean, it is a huge challenge and something that I'm acutely minded of coming into this role. Lincolnshire is a beautiful place, but it's wide and it's expansive, and there are many small communities that deserve the same level of service as everybody else. I mean, there's a couple of things I think that are happening here and now. There's the Project Gigabit. Hopefully members are aware of that, and the provision of fibre to the premise for I think around 61,000 properties, although I'd need to consult with Andy Gutherson and his team just to be sure on that. So there are activities ongoing to look at sort of provide more connectivity. I think there's maybe more that we should be doing from a council perspective in terms of maybe leveraging our spend on wide area networks in the context of the market and market failure. That's a particularly challenging debate, but I think one that we should look to have. And then I think something that we've not talked about but links directly to AI is the Internet of Things. What we want is for people to be supported in their own homes. I think the whole adult social care agenda, potentially there's an opportunity to look at tech-enabled care more widely across the county, and that's something that, again, is going to require connectivity. I was many years ago CIO at Sunderland City Council, and we had a big digital inclusion programme there. So we provided support and guidance for third-party organisations who would train people, and we had large groups of silver surfers, is what we called them, people who could get online and have training. But yeah, you're right, accessibility of the website, the ability to use bots, a very clear understanding that one size will never fit all is really, really important. And you know, everybody matters, right, at the end of the day, and we need to be cognizant of that. Converse of that is when I sit down with Heather and the team, they're saying, do you know what? Some of our service users are incredibly digitally savvy, right? As a young parent, you've got the smartphone in your pocket, you're potentially accessing multiple services. Well, actually, let's create that link. Use that smartphone. Maybe that alleviates some of the overhead on our administrative functions, and maybe it provides a better service to the customer in a way that they're interfacing with their bank and friends and everybody else for that matter. So there's opportunities. It's sort of distilling it down and making sure that we've got the focus and the structure and the prioritisation that's going to deliver the best value for people. And in that regard, clearly, I'll be driven by the directorates and play that supporting role.
Councillor Lee, you wish to make another comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to come back on Councillor Murphy's observation about the NHS. I can't not, as a nurse of 21 years. I can see that AI will have uses within the NHS, but I don't think that AI can be used to look at a patient. When I look at a patient, I look at their respiratory rate. How fast are they breathing? I look at their skin colour. Is it perfused? I look at their swallow to see if they're swallowing properly. But I think often more importantly, they'll ask me questions that they didn't want to ask the doctor because they didn't want to bother them or they didn't think of it at the time. And I really don't think that any patient's going to sit there and say, Alexa, can you just tell me this? I just don't. I'm sorry, I don't. Yeah. I think it'll have its uses. I don't deny that. But it does really worry me when people who aren't healthcare professionals make those kind of judgments. It's the same as when they organise all sorts of things within the NHS. That's why it don't work. You know, you need to ask the people on the ground how the systems work, and I think that's really important.
No, it's hugely important, isn't it? I mean, you know, the last thing that I would ever do is share my medical information with the internet. I just would never do it. Of course, I'm not a social care professional, I'm not a healthcare professional, and what is hugely important, and just to sort of reiterate the point, is that, you know, we are here to support the professionals, right? And there might be the use of a bit of kit, but it needs to be in the context of, and what I think what we want more of, what I want more of, right, is that interaction, right, with somebody who's hopefully less encumbered by processes or whatever it may be, so that you get that personal treatment, you do feel comfortable, and actually you can have that conversation that might, in some cases, I guess, save your life.
Yeah, I'd agree with you with the social care aspect of it as well. Horses for courses, it's got its uses, but they're not universal.
Not universal, and it needs to be done in partnership, absolutely, or it'll never work.
Just before I bring Councillor Marflett in, I certainly sympathise with your analogy, Councillor, and I'll use a military analogy. They will develop something, be it a firearm system or a weapon system, and think, oh, great, it works. No one's actually then gone to the sergeant, the private, and said, use this in this environment, and then it falls on its face. So it's not just the national health; it's a major issue across the piece.
Absolutely, as in the case with all the Duff PPE that we got during COVID. We could have told them it was useless, but no one actually asked us.
Exactly. Councillor Marflett, you should come in.
I think what would be actually a good thing is next in the new council next whenever May time to actually do like council development and bring a sort of the whole concept of AI, because the problem is with AI, you've got bad news being reported and everyone's scaremongering, and actually, and here we all are, and everybody's talking. We've got Tom with the guns and he's off blowing up, and we've got the NHS people looking at the NHS patients. Well, AI doesn't really look at the patient, it looks at the all the diagnostics behind that. And I think where we need is to start and put a bit of meat on the bone and actually just start to really put a bit of focus into where the benefits are with AI, what local government is doing, because I know there's a lot going on. Derbyshire's doing leads in some areas and other councils are they're all doing different leads, and I think if we don't watch it, we can learn without actually making rash decisions and actually start the ball rolling of actually getting a much better understanding of the benefits that it can bring to local government.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think I would hugely welcome that, and if we think about the sort of structure of that session, there's three things I think that are really important for me within that context. Firstly, like you say, what are people doing in the here and now, and how does that lead into what might be done in the future? The second thing that is important to consider, I think, is where we are as an organisation, right? Are we positioned to make some of these jumps? And then the final element is you know, almost me bringing a sort of set of opportunities, a straw man, right, that says these are the areas that we think we can address in the first instance, and it will be cumulative, and we will start to build towards, you know, potentially a more broader vision, but to do that in a very structured and controlled way that is completely transparent, that is scrutinised, and all of the rest of those things. But you know, it's hugely encouraging, Chair, that we've got the sort of level of interest in what I think is going to be quite a sort of transformative set of capabilities. So really welcome that debate, and we can work together to agree a structure on that. And like you say, makes a lot of sense, obviously, to do that with the new cohort.
Just before I go to the recommendation, I'd like to thank yourself, Tom, and the team for answering what are very difficult questions. And as I said to you at pre-meet, welcome to your new role, and I and others, while we're here, look forward to working with you. And like Councillor Lee, I'd certainly take you up personally on any opportunity to have discussions outside of here offline in much more detail, because it's an area of personal interest, and I think we need to be all very aware of what's coming down the road, because eventually we're probably going to have to use it and interact with it as councillors, or our next successors are for our residents, and ultimately that's who we're here to help. I will move to the recommendation, and I move that the report has been received and that the board board satisfaction be recorded and the detailed information and assurance provided. I am very happy to propose this. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Sear. All those in favour, please shout. Thank you. That's unanimous, but I will ask, any against, any abstentions? I see none. Before I go to item 9, I will ask the leader if he has any announcements he wishes to make.
Not at this stage. I think everybody's aware that the devolution deal for Greater Lincolnshire has now been agreed by government, and now we're in the process of working up the details which have to be all sorted out in terms of how it actually works. So there will be a dual election in May for the County Council and for the Mayoral Combined Authority. And good news is the money which was promised by the previous government has now been confirmed as being the same, albeit 28 million one-off money and then £24 million annually. And there are some interesting developments in terms of planning and housing which are emerging in terms of the detail of the agreement and how things will move forward. So from a County Council perspective, I think it's good news and an opportunity to move forward. I think the other thing to say generally is that we had a meeting with the Minister and he made it very clear that his target given by the Prime Minister is to roll out mayoral combined authorities across the whole of the country. So that I think the train is now well on down the track. So there's lots of other areas now who are trying to play catch up, shall we say. The rules are just the same as they were before. You can have what you want, but if you want anything of any substance, including money, you've got to go for a directly elected element. And the other thing that's changed is they are no longer allowing single county deals with a directly elected leader. That won't be permitted by the government. So I think that's the direction of travel, and it's quite clear that a lot of national stuff will be then going through mayoral combined authorities, because civil servants and ministers want to limit the number of people they have to talk to. So I think there'll be lots of interesting developments, I said, on housing planning, but also investment. Certainly the National Investment Fund, I think a lot of that will be then going through mayoral combined authorities. So looking pretty positive at the moment, and obviously as details emerge, we'll bring them back to this council. There will be scrutiny arrangements and audit arrangements as well. So backbench members and district councils will also be able to have play an active part in the development as it moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. On to item 9, which is the People Management Update. The next report can be found between pages 59 and 64 of the agenda pack. This report provides an update on HR management information on Q1 of 24-25, summarising key data presented in the dashboard at Appendix A. This report will be presented by Tony Kavanagh, Assistant Director for HR and Organisational Support. Over to you, Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everybody. So, as Chairman said, there is a report here in front of you which is really around the key aspects of the management information relating to the workforce. I guess, in summary, before I go into the individual areas, the picture is largely positive. There are good sort of indications here and metrics in here that indicate things from a workforce perspective are doing well. However, there are some issues, but particularly in terms of challenges around agency and so on. But if I start with employments first, so obviously there's been an increase in employments in Q1 now and overall in the last 12 months. This is largely a result of Serco employees transferring to the council on the 1st of April. And there's also been some development within the front-facing services within adult care, children's services and place with the ability to recruit. And as I've said in there, there is a link really this with respect to our approach on recruitment and retention. So if we look at voluntary turnover, we are looking at probably the lowest level we have been for some time, certainly for the last 2 years, if not during the pandemic. So given where we were 18 months ago when we were around sort of 10 to 11%, it's a positive picture. I guess there's always a trade-off in terms of how low do we want to go, because I think churn in employment is a good thing as well, bringing new ideas, new people into the organisation. That said, there are continued challenges clearly within some of our front-facing services, really, in terms of adults and children's, as well as some of the more specialised areas within resources. Particularly, we know there are challenges within the legal sector in recruiting lawyers, so that there continues to be challenge in those particular areas. I'll just skip by agency but come back to it. In terms of sickness absence, again, Q1 gives a general picture of the sort of where we have been as an organisation, where we have been below the 7.5 days per FTE. I think it's fair to say we're obviously just below that, and we can see that the sickness absence for the past couple of years has obviously reached a peak and is now levelling off, as we have been for a good sort of 12 months. Again, the areas with the greatest challenge, so adult social care, Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue have seen their absence above the 7.5 days. Children's Services has been largely on a downward trajectory for quite some time now in terms of its sickness absence, which is positive to see, but still above the 7.5. So coming back to the agency spend, obviously you'll see there that at the end of the last financial year, agency spend was in the region of around 8 million, which is a 1.2 million increase on 22-23. I think obviously there's a good reason for that. So yeah, in the main, in Q1, spend went down marginally by 50,000, but the overall trend generally tends to be is as follows, really. So in adult social care, particularly adult frailty and long-term conditions and safeguarding, we've seen an increase of around 100,000 there on average, I would say, in the on-contract agency uptake. Within children's, as we've known within SEND previously and children's education, we've seen the sort of fluctuating increases and then downwards of educational psychology, and that continues to be the case with the sort of up and down nature of that particular service. And then, of course, there's been some inflationary pressures, no doubt, in terms of some of the costs of agencies themselves. And just lastly, just to confirm that the Council's People Strategy is due for review this year, well, 2025. We're undertaking quite a wide range of engagement with stakeholders during this quarter, well, what will be Q3, during the autumn, to get a feel from colleagues around where they feel the key priorities are for the next 3 years from a workforce perspective, and you know what those priorities need to be, just so we can continue to be a good employer and meet some of the aspects of the corporate plan. So I'll pause there, Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor Brockway.
Oh, thank you. Very quick question, but if you're pausing, I'm not sure it's the right time to ask, but I'll ask it anyway. On your table at the end, the latest quarter turnover, the one with the green bars, I can understand completely why adults, children's and Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue would have slightly higher sickness than other people. But why is resources at 8.31%? That's higher than others. Mind you, it might only take 1 or 2 COVID doses for that one, but could you a bit of insight?
I think you're looking at the voluntary turnover rather than sickness absence. So, no. So that statistics don't lies, isn't it really? But no, it is the voluntary turnover rate. I hope that helps.
Why is it up there in resources?
8.31. Well, 8.31 is still a good rate for resources in terms of its turnover. We have obviously there have been some retirements, as you would expect within resources, and key people leaving for that reason. So that will be one of the reasons why it's there, but it's still in terms of it's a healthy figure from a turnover perspective, and we continue to have challenges within business support where people will leave.
Councillor Key.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I'm pleased Tom's gone, because to me this is far more interesting than all that about computers and IT. I did sit and listen with interest, though, but it's not my field. But I do, this is my field. I really enjoy talking about people more than computers. Regarding the sickness figures, I just wonder whether any work's been done on sickness rates for those people who are allowed to work from home, against those who have to come into the office. Simply because what I'm thinking is, if you've got something that's, say, contagious, but you feel all right, there's no reason why you can't work at home, whereas you wouldn't have been obviously advised to come into work. And I just wonder if that is making a difference in these figures. And then if I'm allowed to ask another question, and it's just really the agency business really. We've seen that employments have gone up, including in the frontline services, but it appears that agency hours are also going up. And you'd expect one to come down if the other was going up, and they just both seem to be increasing, which doesn't seem to be where we should be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Key. So in answer of your first question, essentially, in fact, if I answer the second question first in terms of the agency spend, that's probably the one best to go into. So I think in terms of the reason why spend is still going up, yet turnover is going down, what's the correlation? It's a really good question and a really good point. I think the key thing is that because we are still experiencing difficulties in recruiting to some of those key roles. So, for example, social workers as an example, that's and you'll see that in children's and within adults. That's some of the reasons, because of the specialist nature of the roles, that there is still a demand and there is still that increase. I think the off-contract spend within educational psychology, again, we don't employ educational psychologists, for example. The model was moved to a supply and demand type arrangement. And it was felt better to do so because of the fact that because of the peaks and the troughs that we'll get in that sector, it was felt better to use a model that's more flexible, and children's services are clear of the view that is still more cost effective than the direct employment. But obviously activity does go up, hence the need for hence why agency will go up. And that obviously what this doesn't tell you, I guess, is that there has, well, you will have seen that obviously there will have been new services as well that will come on stream that may have challenges in terms of its of recruitment as well. So I do, but I would sort of agree with the general view that you would want to see a decline at some point in terms of that, because of the nature of the fact that employments are going up, turnover's going down. You would expect there to be a downward trend, but I think it is the specialist nature of some of the roles and the nuances that is the reason why it's sort of maintained at that level if that helps. In terms of, sorry, did Councillor Boutrade want to come in?
Thank you, Chairman. It's one of the things sort of Tony, Andrew and myself are working on. It's we've asked for a sort of a deep dive into all the directorates, their spending on employees and contract spend, etc., etc. So it's something that hopefully in the next few months we'll be able to have a lot more analysis about and work from there, really.
Thank you. And in terms of your first question, Councillor Key, so we only actually have a very, very small number of employees who are essentially working from home and defined as working from home. It's very, very small. And you know, for example, emergency duty team are a good example of that in children's services. As most other people are either work-based or hybrid workers, the nature of being a hybrid worker would be that you would come in not necessarily on the same day each week or days each week. We don't have separate figures for those that are, if you like, hybrid and those that are work-based, just simply because of the flexibility nature of that. So I'm unable to give you any information that refers to that. What we do know is that during the pandemic, when practically 99% of people were working from home, sickness absence significantly reduced into sort of 5% ranges. So in terms of like, sorry, the average, not 5%, the average being like, you know, having an average of 5 point something days per employee. So yeah, we don't do that measurement because of the fluidity of the employment that we've got. But in answer to your question, yes, we did see a significant reduction during the pandemic.
Thank you. I mean, my reason for saying that is that I thought it might be a hidden benefit of the new working arrangements. That's sort of what I was leading to. And if I could just finish, Mr. Chairman, I did mean to start with this, following Councillor Lee's comments about not printing agendas off, which I have got it printed off. My computer's been looked at. I have tried to read minutes online, and I have missed something from the last minutes that I was actually at the meeting, and I didn't see it on there, and I've just spotted it on here. So I'm sorry I didn't get in time to correct the minutes, but I was here, and that's with having to trying to do the right thing and read it online. Thank you.
Chair, I wasn't having a dig when I said it to anybody, and Phil's managing perfectly well with his computer. That was my point.
Just before I bring in Councillor Dyer and Councillor Marfley, because it relates to Councillor Key's point, have we noticed, there's 2 points. One is when people were working from home primarily, do we have any way of measuring the difference in productivity? Because that's often a, shall I say, quick back that you get from those that couldn't work from home is, yes, they're working from home, but actually they're not being as productive as they were when they were in an office. And secondly, Tony, and you may not be able to answer, but it's been reported in the press through changes in legislation that people will be able to ask for a lot more flexibility in how they work, i.e. they can ask to work from home, they can ask for flexible working, they can ask for flexi time, etc. As a right rather than as an employer's discretion of how they are given certain things. Do you foresee that having any impact in specific roles to recruit or generally for us as an employer at LCC?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'll take the second question first. So we're waiting on the detail of the employment bill from the current government. It is due to be published any time. It should be at the latest next week because of the 100 days promise that they gave. So yes, there is an element within that we are awaiting, which is around the ability to request the flexibility to work from day one, rather than having any form of continuous service or period of time in employment before you request it. I'd be very surprised if that was a if that didn't become a continued discretionary issue, and that an employer can be quite clear that there are clear business reasons why somebody would need to be in employment and not. But I guess the key issue is going to be in the detail of the bill. But obviously happy to give an update via Councillor Bootroyd at some point once we know the information in more detail. In terms of the first question on productivity, I mean, the question around productivity generally within the public sector, but within local government, has been a topic of discussion for the last 3 years, I would say. There was an intention of, obviously, as a council, we submitted productivity statement in July, but obviously, following that was the deadline given by the previous government, and this was things about transformation, around your agency usage, around the use of IT, those sorts of issues that were asked for by the previous government, and the current government has just stated that it's taking a look, is what they've basically said, in terms of that information, and we'll come back. But I guess there's never, so that's just a little bit of context and background. I think it's fair to say it's an ongoing question and debate. If somebody works from home, are they as productive if they're in work? There's a view around, well, presenteeism doesn't necessarily mean you're working effectively, but then there's also a school of thought, if you're at home, how can you be working as hard if you are than you would be at work? I think this is mainly anecdotal, based on what we've gleaned over the last few years, is that people who are working from home tend to, and again, as I say, anecdotally, they're saying they tend to put more in than they would at work, on the basis that they're not travelling to work, they have access to their computer, they're generally on earlier, they tend to take less breaks, and because of the nature of the teams. So we don't have a method as such of measuring that productivity. All we can do, and I'd say this is a common question across local government as well as all public sector and even private, is that there are sort of outward factors that you would want to look at around an organisation and its productivity, because I guess productivity is so much in roles that we are all doing, is more around quality, around the outputs, around service user resident satisfaction, and around regulatory assessment, those sorts of things, around sickness absence, turnover, etc., etc. So sorry for the long-winded response, but it's a multifaceted issue that isn't as easy just to sort of pin. I hope that helps.
Thank you for that. Councillor Dyer.
Tony, sickness absence, just clarify this for me. 7.37 days per full-time employee. Is that for the whole year or just the quarter?
The whole year. It's a rolling figure. Yeah.
So at the end of quarter one, so if it's a rolling figure, did it start rolling at the start of the year?
Yes.
Or at the start of the financial year?
Yeah.
The previous 12 months?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, okay. Can you provide the data for just the quarter and the breakdown by directorate?
We probably can, yeah. We should be able to do that. In terms, yeah, we'll be able to do that. We'll be able to do, like, give a specific FT, what the nature is for that particular period, yeah. But we generally do it as a rolling figure of the previous 12 months, or even further back than that.
Well, I obviously am a sub on this committee. When I read it last night, I was shocked, because I thought it was 7.5 just in that quarter, which is more than a 10% sickness rate. So I was going to come in and have a go, and obviously you've shot me down there on that. But I just think that should be made clearer, because that isn't clear that it's a rolling figure at all.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But just my point, and I think of course, employees are going to anecdotally really enjoy working from home and say they're more productive and they're enjoying the job a lot more because it's a lot more convenient for them. But I think as an organisation that's got so many employees, we need to actually have the facts and figures to back that up. I don't think anecdotal feedback one way or the other is good enough, quite frankly. You know, residents, you knock on their doors, some of them will say, council employees, they're all sat at home all the time. That's what members of the public say, and that's, you know, I'm saying it in this chamber. Just, you say it's a hybrid working model for the council. What, for an average employee, what is it, 2 days a week in the office? Because I know that isn't here, and there's not enough workspaces, is there, across the county for all the employees to actually be behind a desk 2 days a week. So it's an unrealistic target at the moment, isn't it? And are we encouraging staff to hit this, whatever the target is, for them to be in the office? Or are we just letting it slide if they don't meet that target?
Okay, I think Andrew wants to come in first, but I'd like to respond as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll start and Tony can stop. So I guess we're in a bit of a halfway house at the moment. It links into the item that's coming next around property rationalisation. So not to steal Jane's thunder too much, but the Orchard House B refurbishment that's going on across the way will open up the ability to live fully within the policy that we've set around the smarter working policy, which is to work with your teams on average, so we're talking on average, 2 days a week or thereabouts, but it's at the managerial discretion and it's at the benefit, it's for the benefit of the team and team working. That's predominantly the policy. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Tony, for context.
I suppose just to add to that, yeah. So the policy states, 2 days per week on average for people to come in. We're not in that position, as Andrew says, we're not in that position at the moment, but across the board because of the current position with property. So people are generally coming in once a week, there or thereabouts on average, but some people do more. I think in terms of just trying to pick up some of your points there, in terms of the we need to know more than just anecdotally. I mean, the research that there is out there in terms of from the bigger firms that do a lot of research like Gartner's and such like, is that, and from our staff surveys, is that people think that people are content from the fact that we are a very flexible employer. That's one of the positives that people have come out with as employees, and that was in the last staff survey. The likes of the national evidence is that employees that have that ability to work flexibly appreciate it better. They're a more of attractive employer, and certainly in some of those very difficult jobs to recruit in, I know it's the usual suspect, but social work, clearly they are out and about, but the idea that they had to then travel back to a work base rather than going home at the end of the day because it's easier for them to get on and do their work. I think there are lots of advantages. I think the key thing is we don't have a measure of productivity on how people sitting at home and people being in the office, because there isn't a measure you can really do that is reliable or able to give you. I think the focus has always been on team output or directorate output, organisational output, and as I say, some of those factors in terms of that.
Just coming back, if I may, Chairman, just on a couple of points. I mean, I haven't looked at the research, but you can find research one way or the other on everything. I think, for instance, Boots, they've cancelled their working from home policy, haven't they? And they're back at their base at Nottingham for the most part. And you've just mentioned staff being happier, etc. But actually, the turnover figures that we've seen don't reflect that. The turnover figures for this council are about average, aren't they, for other organisations? Is that correct? So
no.
Okay. No. But just you can come back on that as well. But just 2 points. When we have this office space back, are we going to be enforcing that? So at the moment, I think it's a bit of a laissez-faire sort of approach. but are we actually going to be a bit more hard line on staff coming back into the office? And my second point, when I've spoken to members of staff who have a critique of the current working arrangement, is that that day when they're to come back in the office, many of them are keen to do that, because it's all pre-booked workspaces and it's all over the place, they can't actually sit with their colleagues. So there's some staff in highways, for instance, and they're sat with staff from another department. So that's not productive at all if you're coming in to work with your team and you're not sat with your colleagues. So are we going to be able to make sure that spaces are bookable so that colleagues can actually work with their team as is intended in what you've just said? I'll shut up now, Chairman. Thanks.
Andrew.
Yeah, probably another double act with Tony, but yeah, so some of those circumstances that you've heard examples of are a product of the current footprint that we've got whilst we're doing the refurbishment aren't the ideal solution to deliver that policy. So we have had to allocate rooms to teams. Now that is an important point. So if it's highway staff, for example, they have got a zone allocated to the place directorate within the Lancaster House building across the car park there. And we have tried to keep space for teams available. The problem is because we're at a reduced capacity, oftentimes that size of that space doesn't facilitate bringing a full team together, but we are trying to, I know within resources, we try and carve the space that we've got available to us to sub-teams, so maybe at head of service level, for example, so you are getting that genuine team working in the time that we have got that space available. But yeah, I think coming back to the policy, 2 days a week, I think given the council's making the investment in that space and we do see the value of bringing teams together, I think there would be an expectation that we are using that space that we've got to capacity, which means working more and closely to the policy than we have been able to in the current constrained factors.
Yeah, I won't add much more. I suppose just on the point of the turnover figure, our turnover figure when benchmarked with other local authorities of similar size, ours is much lower than the average. You know, and I can bring some of that information to this committee as required on that. But yeah, I won't add any further in terms of, I think Andrew's said the position. I think in terms of your comment on research, I think research is really important, and I think empirical evidence is important, and I think when you've got nationally recognised organisations giving you clear feedback around what employees and employers are saying, I appreciate there's always a different opinion. I think it's still important to look at that sort of evidence as well.
Councillor Marfleet, then the Vice Chairman, then Councillor Dilks, then Councillor Key. Yeah, then Councillor Lee at the end.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, thank you for the report. My only comment really is it could do with a bit more flesh in there. You know, for argument's sake, we have your boxes, you've got sickness. Well, it'd be quite nice just to see a quick graph, bar chart, exactly what the sicknesses are. Are they long-term, short-term, or mental health, whatever? There is no way can we help diagnose or put any help, support, or recommendations, because there's just really nothing here. Then we go on to the next one, the voluntary. Well, happy if you're retired, but there might be a lot just saying, you know, I'm fed up, I've had enough, and I'm walking out. It doesn't, you know, and they have voluntarily gone. The only thing it doesn't say is you've been sacked. You know, it doesn't, it's too open. It should be, yes, actually 4% retired, fair dues, we know that's, but if you got 7% voluntary leaving because actually they really don't like working here or they don't like the job, which is actually perhaps more the case in adults, maybe that actually it's hard work and they perhaps don't want it. But if we don't understand those issues, we're never going to resolve those issues, and they just keep coming at us all the time. And then into your whole sort of agency spend, well, that could be broken down into, in effect, adult social care or children's. And actually, where is it that we're really having to spend that money? And I don't think you need to do a lot. I just think you need one more page with bar charts on, just categorising actually what's going on in those charts would be my thing, because it just doesn't give us enough to really understand what is going on. That's all I'd say.
just before you come in, just because I know I've raised this with you, I know Councillor Stokes has. Tony can only get information when exit interviews are, shall I say, conducted and they're entirely voluntary. So if somebody wants to leave and doesn't want to tell you why they left, you can't make them. I take. Yeah, you could say that so many have left and they haven't said why, but it's very difficult for Tony because you can't mandate them. If there's anything you want to come back on, Tony, then feel free, but I wanted to get that in there.
Thank you, Councillor Marflick. Thank you, Chairman. I think very happy to bring more information to OSMB, most definitely, and provide more detail. I think it's always a difficult balance between trying to give an overview rather than getting massively into some of the detail. But I'm very happy to pick up your points, Councillor Marflick, and bring those back, and we can look at some more information.
Just on that, Tim. As in, we don't suddenly want 15 pages of dissecting down just because we've gone and spent some money on software and you can now go berserk with it. But actually, it's just a bit more concise. So it just gives us a bit more to look at and why. Thank you.
Acting Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. For me, an organisation's biggest asset are actually its staff, and we've talked about the challenges around the hybrid model. What initiatives do we have in place to enhance our employees' training and development? In other words, making sure they can be the very best they can be. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, very pertinent point and very pertinent question at the moment, particularly with the current government's skills agenda. I think in terms of opportunities for employees and their learning and development, I think obviously we have a model within the county council which we have those more specialised departments, the areas like adults and children's that have got their own development functions that then provide the sort of post-qualification development and training, and they're very much the experts in the right place to enable them to do that, which is a real positive. So I'd say in terms of what we know from development for some of our professionals areas, it's good based on what our regulators say and so on. In terms of some of the other areas, I think there's more of a debate and more we need to do, I think, in terms of what are the key skills that we need in the future. I think that's, for me, is part of the discussion around the people strategy discussion that we're having, and to understand really going forward, picking up what Tom was saying about AI, about IT development. You know, we need to take a real sort of holistic approach in terms of having a real proper understanding of what the needs of our services are, our residents are, and what that looks like in terms of a training and development plan. Because I'm not a great believer in a sheep dip approach, really, in terms of development and training corporately. You can have as much e-learning as you like, you can have as much, but for me, I think we need to be honing in and being quite specific. So I think there's more to do, just being honest, and I think we need, it's part of that engagement to really start to have that debate. I think some of the development that we do probably doesn't make a significant difference, I don't think, whereas some of it is. And I think it's been quite clear with stakeholders and such like about, which direction we want to go in and what technology we want to use and what does certain workers of the future look like for the council.
Councillor Dilks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. A couple of points. I'll try and be brief, conscious of time. The working at home thing, I think Councillor Dyer's right, that, some more data would be useful on it. I appreciate it's hard to measure productivity sometimes. Anecdotally, I'm retired, but I used to commute to London and eventually negotiated, 3 days a week there and 2 at home. And I absolutely, I can say I was there were many more productive hours when I was working at home than in the office when you're chatting with colleagues and around, and you're not actually getting the work done that you should be. The office in London didn't open until about 9:30 in the morning. I'd already done a couple of hours work, and I was gone by 4:30 to get the train home. I did used to work on the train, I've got to say. But anyway, I'm just saying. I think more data, would be sort of helpful. And likewise, I think Hugo was just coming back. I think that was a point that was my second point, was on the sickness rates. It's quite hard to sort of measure where we are when we're not sure whether it's an odd day off here and there or long-term sickness. And, one or two people having long-term sickness can skew those figures particularly in a small department. So, a little bit more sort of anecdotally around that would be helpful. But moving to my main question, it was on, and I think it was Jackie picked it up first, the sort of, we shouldn't be surprised that adult social care and wellbeing and fire services have got the highest rate of sickness. It would seem, you'd kind of think it kind of reflects their work and the stress of the work that those particular areas do. But the question really is, what support do we give them? Do we give them extra support? And are we confident we're doing everything we can to support those workers who we put under most stress? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dilks. I mean, in terms of that sort of question, there's a couple of areas I think to that. In terms of there's the welfare side of things in terms of support to those workers. So I think it's fair to say we've got a very comprehensive staff wellbeing support service to employees, whether that's in LFR, adults or whatever. We've invested in our counselling services in the last 12 months to provide a wider offer, including things like trauma and those sorts of issues. So from a welfare perspective, we do that, and I know LFR as an example has its own specific support services as well for those sort of very traumatic incidents that can take place. So I think the other arm of that is when we need to intervene in sickness absence, and I think it's fair to say that our managers have direct support from the HR function in terms of when there's a need to utilise the sickness absence procedure, so that people have time if they're on long-term sickness to fully recover properly. But obviously we have to have an eye on the public purse and service delivery to ensure that at some point we have to make a decision whether somebody is going to return or not, which is a difficult balance. And then obviously there's the short-term sickness, which is I think is a little bit more straightforward in terms of intervention and management. But I'm confident, and feedback is that managers are getting the right support in terms of managing those situations with their employees.
Councillor Key.
Yes, thank you. Just a quick comment on what I am interested in, the hybrid working and the working from home. And talking about productivity, when we're talking about social services and things like that, it makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable actually, because it's more to do with the outcome that's achieved rather than productivity. It's a strange word that always gets brought in, I think, with some of these services. And I don't care where people work. They can work on Mount Everest if they're giving me the service that you know I'm entitled to. So it doesn't bother me at all. And sometimes the public do get a bit of a skewed idea, or some of the public, especially if you listen to some of the social media or read some of the social media posts, which are just rubbish most of the time. Anyway, what I would suggest it's more to do with than productivity is strong individual performance management. And I think if people are being managed correctly and the managers are confident in their staff, that's the most important thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Lee.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to repeat some of the points. Sorry, but I haven't spoken yet. The last item was about IT, and we talked about how we can utilise it and that. And, you know, a part of that is going to be, does a person need to travel across a rural county to come into county offices to write a report? Can they not have a meeting via Teams? It's about making use of it, isn't it? And I'd also suggest that it's really important, given some of the figures, and it's not just at LCC, it's across the board. You've got to be an attractive employer, you know, and you've got to compete in the workplace for when you recruit staff. So I heard that word enforce. I think enforcing rules just because they're rules isn't necessarily the best idea, and I think managers will know what works. And you can spot when you would spot if someone, and I don't think for a minute anyone would abuse it, but you would see it. And I think just finally, what people say, well, we all know the sort of rubbish sometimes that you hear people, you know, those people without names say. I think we've got some great staff. Just recently, just for a change, instead of having highway stuff clogging up my inbox, I have had dealings with adult and children's social care, and the officers are amazing. And I just wanted to say that we've got some really good officers. And I don't think for a minute you meant that, Tom. That's not what I'm saying. But actually, if people say council employees sit at home and they're not doing the jobs, well, I would challenge that personally and to their face as well.
Thank you.
Just add, Carol, because I accept a lot of what you said. My point, I was getting round to that, without the data for us to be able to back that up, it's very difficult. But no, I accept a lot of what you say.
Mic's off. Seeing no further questions, I will move to the proposal, and I move that the report be endorsed by this committee and the board's comments and suggestions and feedback be shared with the relevant officers. I'm happy to propose that report. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Key. All those in favour, please show. Seeing none, but I will ask. Any against and any abstentions? And I see none. On to item 10 of the agenda, which is the transformation programme. This scrutiny item can be found on pages 65 to 116 of the agenda pack, and updates the board on the transformation programme with a focus on the property rationalisation and property recommissioning projects. I will then therefore pass over to Claire Rowley, Head of Transformation, who's also in the chamber, as well as Andrew McLean, Assistant Director, Corporate Transformation Programmes and Performance, and Jane Serby-Warrington, Assistant Director, Corporate Property. And over to you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman, and to all others in the chamber. So, as outlined, the item, the transformation programme agenda item, is to provide the meeting with an overview and update on the transformation programme itself, and also agree our future reporting requirements into the board. The report outlines the background, the governance, the scope and focus of our projects and our programmes of work over pages 65 and 69. And Appendix A provides you with a list of all of our projects, the high-level detail, key project milestones and benefits and savings that have delivered or plan to be delivered on pages 71 to 106. As part of this item, we ordinarily provide you with a focus update on one of the projects or programmes within the transformation programme. And for today, that's the property rationalisation and property recommissioning project over pages 107 to 115 that Jane will take you through. So the key points I wanted to bring to your attention were to reiterate the governance presented at previous meetings and also provide assurance to the meeting that each project and programme of work has a project board in place with project leads and monthly highlight reporting. There's weekly check-ins across the whole of the transformation programme, and there's a steering group that meets regularly throughout the year. We also have monthly reporting into our corporate leadership team and regular reporting into this meeting. All of this remains in place and strong for the transformation programme. I also wanted to provide assurance that benefits are measured and reviewed on a regular basis. We've always been clear on the need to identify, measure and also realise benefits, and recognise that some won't be realised until after a project has closed. But these benefits do continue to be monitored through to realisation. Across all these projects, there are also non-cashable benefits that are identified, measured and monitored through to project delivery or indeed after that project has closed. I also wanted to provide assurance to the meeting on the way that risks and issues are managed through the programme, and that there are no current live issues within the transformation programme itself. So within Appendix A, I've shared details of each project, providing a high-level project overview, a current RAG status. Apologies, Chair, I think Councillor Dyer's got one. Oh, sorry. Apologies. Just checking you could hear me. Progress against the milestones, benefits both cashable and non-cashable, and for each project and programme of work. We've got no projects currently reporting a red RAG status. We do have 3 reporting an amber and 1 reporting a green amber status, and there are mitigating actions in place for all of these. Councillor Hill had already mentioned about the devolution deal that is now in place for Lincolnshire. So we've updated our milestones for that project, but that was after publication of the report. So that moves us back into a green status, and we're on track to meet these. Educational travel and the business performance improvement piece of work around school admissions and educational travel is also reporting an amber status. And then again, just to assure the meeting that we do have an improvement plan in development and being agreed to actually meet the needs of this project to bring that back to a green status also. And the final project was the property recommissioning that has been reporting a green amber status. And what I'll do now, if that's okay, Chair, is pass over to Jane to give us the focus update on those projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Councillor Key, I'm not sure where property sits between people and IT, but hopefully I'll be able to give you I'll be able to bring it alive anyway. I've heard windmills are off the agenda, Councillor Key. So, yeah, just a quick whistle-stop, really, in terms of the rationalisation update as part of the transformation programme. So just to remind everyone in terms of rationalisation, in terms of what we are trying to achieve. So the rationalisation programme does focus on the Newland campus and associated properties and 4 localities of Boston, Gainsborough, Spalding and Sleaford. There are a number of strategic aims, and I'll just whip through them really quickly. The first one is to dispose of surplus office accommodation that we no longer need. The second one is to generate those much needed capital receipts in order to support the organisation's capital programme, and also to generate revenue savings as well from the closure and disposal of properties. So moving on in terms of what we've achieved in terms of Lincoln. So since initiation of the programme last September, we have progressed the refurbishment of Orchard House B, and we've also demolished the business, the modernisation unit to create additional parking on site at campus as well, and that is work in progress. We have demolished a storage porta cabin next to the Orchard House B building, and we've also disposed of 2 properties on the avenue, including 9 to 11 and 15-17 the avenue as well. We have marketed and we have accepted an offer on 13 the avenue, and that is going through the process and will hopefully conclude in a successful completion. We've also undertaken some really valuable accessibility audits across Lancaster House and county offices in order to compile a programme of works for improvements across campus as well. And we've appointed a workspace manager to lead in the provision of a total FM solution for office space as well. And that is a much needed role across property that we have needed. In terms of the localities, we have relocated staff from Sleaford County offices to Sleaford area offices, and we have agreed the relocation of the moving and handling training facility out of Sleaford County offices as well to Lexicon House. And we've also undertaken quite a lot of service engagement in terms of agreeing an approach for Gainsborough Marshall Yard. So a lot going on with regard to the property rationalisation space. The pack does include some photographs in terms of what we've achieved so far on Orchard House B. We are working at pace to get that up and ready for the end end of sort of December, beginning of January 2025. So if I'm honest, those pictures are probably out of date now because we are working at pace in terms of the contractor. So in terms of what is coming up within Lincoln, so as I've said, full refurbishment of Orchard House B. It remains on track in terms of timeline and cost. I think Councillor Dyer, just picking up on your point earlier around hybrid working, and a really good point you raise. I think it's important we get a balance that when colleagues do come into the office, we give them an environment that they want to come in and they want to work in, so they want to be productive. But also it's a collaborative environment, and we haven't got officers just coming in doing team calls 9 till 5. So it's that balance I think we need to strike in terms of planning the space. So construction work's due to complete, as I've said, beginning of December, end of December, beginning of January 2025, with the re-equipping of furniture and IT to start ahead of this. Office moves, relocations will follow, and that does include registrars from our Linden Road property, and that will hopefully conclude in a successful sale of the Linden Road property and also Crown House as well. Last but not least, we have got a strategy workshop scheduled in November to review the holistic view of Lincoln campus. A lot has gone on, I think, over the last 12 months, but we do think there's kind of more to do and more opportunities we can get hold of as well. So again, there's a picture in the pack, I think it's, well, slide 7 on my screen, around the new registrar's office, the new registrar's ceremony room, in terms of what that will look like when it's open as well. In terms of the property recommissioning programme, so in terms of recommissioning programme, a really big programme for us in corporate property, working hand in glove with colleagues in finance, transformation, legal and also procurement as well. So what we've got is a property services contract that covers facilities management, professional services such as our major projects, and also our estates and data team. That contract is currently due to expire March 2025, and we are going through the process of procuring a new contractor for our facilities management service. There is a decision expected at the end of the month, so it's an imminent decision, and also a new delivery partner for our major projects as well, and that decision is expected to be made in January 2025. I think it's been quite clear historically that we could do more as a property team in a number of areas, and one thing we are trying to really create is that intelligent client function to ensure that we do get assurance and we get oversight in terms of those big property contracts that we do run. Last but not least there, I've also put in terms of the insourcing of the estates and data team as well. That is to be established by the 1st of April 2025. So a lot going on in terms of kind of changing the space and changing the way we work with regard to property. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Dyer.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you both for your report. Page 68, and it is throughout as well, Green Master Plan. Carbon omissions, it should be emissions. It's throughout a couple, I've seen it on a couple of occasions, so that just needs to be picked up. And I did also have a chuckle to myself of the order, because it's not alphabetical, and I just thought it probably said a lot about, you know, where Green Master Plan is in the priorities of this council if it's tagged along at the bottom, and I think it was a bit of a shame, to be honest. But just on page 78, you mentioned IMPI. I'm not a fan of IMPI. Whenever you go on the website, it clutters up the website. It's a dreadful thing. So I'm coming after it now. Have you got any data on the use of IMPI? How often is it used? How much does it cost the taxpayer? And is there any way to move that dreadful thing off the website? Because quite frankly, I hate it. And I'd love to know if there's any positive feedback from members of the public. And I can see even Councillor Lee agrees with me on that. So we're singing from the same hymn sheet on that. Use of, further down on that page, use of technology within adult care and children's health, including a reduction of calls and emails to the CSC. I'm all for that, but I do think we've got to be cautious about it, because adult care, it's elderly people who might not be online and might be vulnerable. And I do think we should still have a good service level provided there for people who, quite frankly, they just want a service. They don't want to go online. They want to speak to people. And if they've never used a computer before, they're not going to start when they need adult social care. So I just want your assurance that whilst that's on here, we're still going to be ensuring that those facilities are available for those who need it. That one's been covered. That one's been covered. And then finally, on page 104, coming on to the Green Master Plan, I just thought it was a bit... I mean, I thought there's no detail in there whatsoever. And you look at benefits and savings. So we're going to plant a few trees, and that's about it, really, and something about the local nature recovery strategy and the climate adaptation. I know there's a lot more work going on behind the scenes there. I know that, but it's not being presented within this report at all. So that, to me, says this isn't a working document at all. Is this something that's just put together for this committee and it's never looked at? If that is the case, can members not have access to the actual internal document? Because a lot more is going on behind the scenes there. That's very vague. But my point on that would be, I'd be very keen to see as a committee, because we have, and I think you mentioned it's the government's target to hit net zero by 2050, but the council also has that ambition as well. So we're not doing it just because the government wants us to. It's something that we've set as well. But can we have a breakdown by directorate? Because I think it was mentioned in the IT briefing earlier that there's issues in different directorates with software moving forward. And part of climate change and the adaptations that the council will have to make will impact all the service areas. And I can imagine some areas are more sluggish to change than others. And it'd be interesting to see whether we could have a performance breakdown for each directorate within the council. Thanks, Chairman.
Okay, I'll try and take them in order. So firstly, your point on the order of how things are put out, and in fact it looks like Green Master Plan's tagged on. It's absolutely not. What we've done is order them according to where they fit to achieving the council values and priorities. So if you're looking, we've kind of colour-coded them. They provide a good value council services altogether, best experience. So that's how we've kind of ordered them and make sure that falls all across. So just want to assure you it's not tagged on. If I just stay with Green Master Plan then for a minute. So as you've quite rightly pointed out there, Councillors, it's an enormous piece of work. And to try to capture it in such a way that we can make it sensible to officers across the whole council and members as well is quite a feat. But what we're doing is we are working with the Corporate Environment Board. I've got one of my team in there now, actually working so that we can make sure we've got those really robust updates coming into the Corporate Environment Boards and then yourself. And what I'd like to suggest is maybe the Green Master Plan could be our next focused update into this meeting, and then we can have a more kind of rounded discussion around that, if that's okay with you all. So that's what I propose on that one. Because absolutely there's loads more work going on and we are monitoring and managing against all of that. If I come back to IMPI, so we do have data on the use of IMPI. So we've got IMPI, our digital assistant that sits on the website. Now, lot of debate about what it looked like, where it sat and its positioning on the website. What we've found, because we've looked at lots of different local authorities that do have a web digital assistant, ours is position very much in line with everybody else's, and the feedback we've had from colleagues, members, those external to the local authority, is that ours is a lot easier to see and access, and it doesn't seem to be obscuring anything else on the website. So it'd be great to catch up with you afterwards to see what your experience is, if that's possible, because it's not the feedback we've had. What we can tell you, we've got all the data around the usage and the impact. What I can tell you is the reason, the business case for putting in the digital assistant on the web and also on our core line, was to see a reduction in calls into our customer service centre by 30% for those corporate call queues and the switchboard that we were focusing on, and we have achieved that. And we've also achieved the financial savings as well as part of that work. So we've got the numbers to support that, but the deflection that we were aiming for, the 30% deflection in calls, we have achieved. Oh, sorry, then there was the adult care and community wellbeing and children's piece, wasn't there? So it's, yeah, on that, absolutely. Our digital strategy is that we have digital by design, not by default. We will not turn any lines off. So anyone that wants to contact us in a more traditional way, or a way that they're used to, they will still be able to do that. What we are doing is working with colleagues across adult care and community wellbeing and children's services to see where we can use technology that's available to to us, that will not be those safeguarding calls. This is about those residents that call in maybe for some guidance, for some signposting, and making sure that we've got the information in the right place, because we find there's always a cohort in about 30% of calls that are coming in, and actually they just can't find what they need on the website. So what we are doing is we've looked at the number of calls, what they're about, what people are asking for, and where we can make that information available to the community on the website or by another means, we will do that, but we wouldn't switch the lines off. People are still able to call. It's not digital by default. So just to assure you there, that was never the intention.
Thank you. Just before I bring Councillor Marfley in, just on the point Councillor Dyer raised, I'd certainly endorse that round. We cannot switch lines off, however much it might save money. I'll underestimate my mother's age. She is in her late 50s. If you said to her the only way to contact this council over something is to use a website, it ain't going to happen, because she doesn't have the technological background to do it. And actually, I had to do it for my blue badge, and actually it was biblically frustrating, because all I wanted was a very simple answer of, it's taken a while, where is it? Could I phone a human? No, I had to go through about 20 different sub-menus, and luckily I could, being fairly technically literate, and I knew what I was looking for. And worst case scenario, I'm very lucky, because I'm a councillor, I could come into the office and say to Dem Services, I need to speak to so-and-so. Who is it I need to speak to? Our residents don't have that luxury. So we absolutely must make sure those lines are not just for those who are elderly, but also for people who normally wouldn't use this council for things like a blue badge, because actually that's possibly the only time they speak to this council is, I have to renew my blue badge. We have to make sure, irrelevant of costs, that option is open to our residents, because it might seem easy to those that use that website all the time, and they know what they're looking for. From personal experience, and I'm pretty technically literate, I can assure you, for some things it's very easy. For other things it's very, very complicated, especially if you're stressed and you're trying to find something because it's an emergency or it's something that's a high priority. You can't think straight because you're flustered. It's not as easy as it could be. And I'll bring Councillor Marfley in.
Thank you, Tom. My comment, really, looking at this without going into too much individualness on it all, you are too slow. It takes you guys forever to transform. And take that building out there. I think we decided to knock that one down about 15 years ago. The one at the back of Sleaford, the district council offices, well, we moved out of there having group meetings about 8 years ago because it was going to be knocked down, and we wouldn't be there this time, still there. You know, and I think it is slow, it's clunky, and actually you need to speed up, because to even get a simple thing like a tap repaired on one of our own properties takes 9 months, and it drips all the time, and it escalates into a £1,500 repair job when actually all you need is a plumber straight out there or put a PTFE tape down. Speed does need to happen into your thing, because it does take a long, long time. And I was actually in one of our properties and they said, oh, we just need to do this in our kitchen. I'm thinking, oh, good luck. See you in about 9 months' time. That's just to do a little job so that they can open up the cafe to start trading. And it's just, you know, there was Green Master Plan. Actually, I've read it. I went through it actually with the officer in charge, and I'm like, oh, we can do a lot quicker than this. But actually, because it involves different departments, actually it becomes so sluggish. And because no one's here, no one crosses on corridors anymore to even have a quick chat and to nudge things along. So we have to actually work out how to actually get communication things quicker, especially in hybrid working, because no one's in corridors to have a chit-chat. And I sort of go on about it, but the Green Master Plan, there were so many things that we can win on, but I'm just sat there and I said to the guy, unless we get really much better talking across departments and people aren't giving it priority, and it will just fade. And, you know, and I think that was all I would say, is speed up. Thank you.
Councillor Marfleet, as always, thank you for your comments. I think we've had a discussion previously around property and it being too slow. And I think from a point of view in terms of sat here as the AD of corporate property, I don't think we have been good enough in the past. I don't think we have been as responsive as we could be, if I'm completely honest. It is something that we really want to turn round. And I'm really hopeful and confident that through the new kind of contract that we will sign up to, that will help that. There have been a number of conversations around the whole kind of times of responsiveness, speed and priority areas. We are trying to move things from priority, what we call 4, so lesser priority things, up the chain as well. So we are working behind the scenes to try and change that. So just to say, just to give you some assurance, I am confident in that we can turn that round, but that acknowledgement as well, that I think there has been times where we just haven't been as responsive as we should have. So I do take that on board.
Having said that, I will defend our property teams, and they do thousands of repairs all the time through the work we do on this building, on our other buildings and on our schools. We don't hear about 95% of it, but we do hear about the odd dripping tap or the odd thing that hasn't been right. So it's just sat here, and I just wanted to defend Jane and her team. We're doing an awful lot of work to really push through on that last sort of 5% of property, and hopefully over the next 6 to 12 months you will see a real difference. Thanks.
Andrew.
Yeah, I wasn't sure with the feedback whether it was directed at property and or the way that we transform, because you did mention transform as well. I would like to just push back, constructively, that the programme has delivered significant savings in the time that it's been set up. We've only been generally working just over 3 years, I think, as a whole, as a programme. And we talk in other items that come here, particularly around the finance, about how strong a financial position the council is, and that is a key contributory factor, is us keeping on the front foot and creating that capacity to allow you as members to be able to continue to invest in things that you see as the priority, because a lot of other councils aren't in that way. So it's proactive. We can always things can always move faster, but it's a big organisation. Oftentimes needing quite a lot of corporate-wide change, but I do think we are doing good stuff and continue to do good stuff. And I don't want us to lose sight of that side. There's been quite a lot of feedback about our services in here, and I would make a plea to members that you are sharing that in the right form as well, with officers who are leading those services, whether it's the Blue Badge team, whether it's TAPS in buildings, that we get that feedback to the right teams in the right orderly manner as well, so we can continually improve as we set out to do as well. Thank you.
Just come back. I mean, I take on board what you say and everything, but it just is, sometimes I look at what I've achieved in my own division, and speed is of the essence, and sometimes just to get a speed change sign actually took me 3.5 years, and actually you've got the devolution for the mayor. Well, he's only got 4 years before he's up for election. He won't want to hang around. He wants to get moving, and it really is something that we do. It's not just here, it's everywhere, but bureaucracy gets in the way and slows it down, and we've got to somehow get quicker. And my thing for you guys is get things going quicker, tighten up the deadlines, make so that someone else has got to actually do something, and just try and let's get moving a bit quicker. That's all. Thanks.
Just to, shall I say, assuage Andrew on his point, it wasn't actually the team that was the issue. They were brilliant. It was actually getting the number I needed to get through to them. But they were, once I'd got that, they were fantastic. Couldn't fault the team. It was actually waiting on other things outside of their control. But they were fantastic. They were, very, very helpful. The issue was actually getting the information I needed to speak to the right person that was the issue, but the team were brilliant. And that's often, I think, for residents, that's often the problem. It's not actually the service they get, it's getting to the right person who can give them the answer they need, and then the service kicks in. I think once they get that, not always, but most of the time, certainly in my experience when I've spoke to residents, actually the service is very good. It's actually just getting that right door opened to get to them. It's Councillor Key, then Councillor Brockway, then Councillor Lee.
Thank you. I'll just be very quick because I can see we're running a bit over. I'm just talking about the county council offices in Sleaford now, the porter cabins. Many years ago, I was a marriage registrar in those offices, and brides and grooms were walking up dingy corridors to the marriage room, and we said, oh, don't worry, it's all going to get knocked down. And repairs were done to them years ago, and we all said, what a waste, because they're all going to get knocked down. Well, it's a good job they did repair them, because they haven't been knocked down. So really, it was just an update on that particular project, really, and when will they get knocked down. And if there is any spare money, there's a windmill up the road that would really like it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Key. Couldn't resist. Yeah, so in terms of Sleaford County officers, obviously part of the rationalisation programme, I understand there is still a team within the county officers, which we are trying to relocate to Lexicon House, to obviously much better environment in terms of productivity and all of that. We have had some, or we're in the process of pulling together some feasibility studies with regard to bringing out some costs, et cetera, in terms of demolition Sleaford County offices. So I think it's there or thereabouts. I think we need to just kind of work through that feasibility, and we are probably looking at spring, summer next year in order for the demolition to be completed of that building. And obviously once we've demolished, it will ensure a vacant empty site, which will therefore kind of eradicate or mitigate any security concerns and risks moving forward as well. But more than happy to keep you in the loop in terms of how that is progressing. But yeah, as I say, the work behind the scenes is going on with regard to that demolition. Thank you.
Councillor Brockway.
Thank you. Very quick. Page 91, School Admission and Education Transport. Can I declare an interest here, please, because my grandson uses the services. Just to give you some feedback on improvements you might want to know about. First of all, the school admissions for special needs children has in the past been absolutely terrible, to be honest, with parents being put through significant worry. But I have to say there does appear to have been quite a considerable improvement, especially in officer contact, which has made all the difference. So I wanted you to know that. And the other thing that I think it's important to do is to praise where praise is due. And the special needs educational transport is superb. Absolutely superb. I'm not sure how you could improve it, to be honest, but I wanted you to know that. Thank you.
Councillor Lee.
I'll try and be quick. First of all, IMPI is intensely irritating. I'm sorry, I don't know who's told you it's all right, but it really ain't. It's really annoying, and it makes you feel like not using the site. So I just don't like it. I really don't like it. So that's IMPI. Digitalisation, I'm glad people have made the point that not everyone wants to talk to a computer. Some people do. They've got the uses, but you've got to be able to have the fallback of a person by nature of the services. In terms of the transformation programme, it's a huge programme. I'm really impressed by it. Actually, you look through, start at page 112, look at what the savings are and the capital receipts. It's really impressive. So rather than complain about it, I would actually compliment you. It's across 4 sites. It's not just in what, it's a big programme. So actually, I think well done you. And I know it's a couple of years ago, but COVID had a huge impact. It had an impact on recruiting and retaining staff and obtaining materials. I in a past life, was involved with a labour club, trying to get materials to do work there. It was a nightmare. So maybe you have got someone who can mend your tap, but you try getting hold of the washer or whatever it is that you want. Do you know what I mean? It's often more complex. So actually, I would congratulate you on the transformation programme. I see it as a positive thing, but please get rid of IMPI. Thank you.
If I could just say one thing, thank you for the feedback, and it would be great to have a conversation with yourself and Councillor Dyer about IMPI, because yeah, we have got it now, but we want to make it the best it can be. So if we could, that'd be brilliant.
I'm sure it's not just us. And the idea that it stops people ringing customer services, there might be other reasons for that. You know, it might not be IMPI. It might be that they just can't get through, or they find it too much aggravation or something like that. You know what I mean?
just before I bring in Councillor Sear, to use my blue badge example, that was one of the biggest irritations I had as well. It was, I don't want it, if I want to use it, it's there. Don't plaster it all over a screen. And I wanted to throw the machine out of the window. It was really, to have it there, fine, if you want to use it. But a lot, and it's not just our site, a lot of them have this problem. They ping across your screen as something very intrusive. By all means, have a little thing on the side. It's there if you want it. A bit like the old, if you remember the old paperclip assistants you used to get in Microsoft Office, and I'm showing my age. By all means, stick it there, but don't ping it across my screen in the middle of my screen. If I want it, I'll use it. So I would certainly welcome a conversation on that, because I've found that myself, and I know, and I'll use my mother again as an example, she found it even more irritating than I did, and all she wanted was an email or a human. Again, most people, if they can't find what they want a human. And I think a lot of the reasons, before I bring Andrew in, why it's diverted calls potentially is because the word has got round that actually the people in our call centre, they specialise in two key areas. Well, three. One is safeguarding, one is adults care, the other is children's. And they know actually then trying to get to somebody for any other matter isn't particularly easy, because actually they can't answer your question because they're not trained to do that, so it's not fair to expect them to answer that. But then there's no guarantee, again, to use home working as an example, that you'll get somebody in an office, because there might not be anybody, and you might not then be able to get through to them via a telephone. And I think that's actually what's diverted your calls, because the words got round actually that the specialisation for the call centre are those three key areas, and they're right that they're there as a specialisation, but that's probably what's diverted your calls, not the use of an AI assistant, which in my, and I can only go on anecdotal because I've not got it in data, but a lot of people, a lot of residents and family and everybody I speak to, and it's not just our site, it's all sites, the AI, the robots, whatever you wish to call, they find them biblically irritating. And actually, they just want rid of them, because you'll type something, I want to do this, whatever it be, cancel a contract, a mobile phone contract, and you'll answer the same question 3 times when all you want's a human. And I think that's the same thing. I'll bring Andrew in, and then I'll bring Councillor Sear in.
Thank you, Chair. So just on the IMPI point, I suppose what we'll do is present some of the information and the facts behind the usage of it, and the numbers that do use it. I think, like you say, no matter what bot or automation's put in there, there's always constraints with it and frustrations with it. So happy to have a conversation, always keen to review, especially when we'll be nearly a year on as well, around the impact of it. There might be something in some people's browsers. I'm looking at it right now. You can't access IMPI without clicking on it and launching it. It sits right away in the corner of our corporate website on its own, separate. Even if you hover over it, it doesn't come up. You have to press it to use it. So I'm not sure, so it shouldn't be coming up and taking over a screen or directing it. You do have to press it. That was one of the early feedback that we got, that actually, so it wasn't imposing. So it stands out in a different colour to our corporate colours. So it's there and you can see it, but it shouldn't be coming over and taking over browser pages and distracting you from the rest of the content of the website, as that was one of the things we did take into consideration on that. But like Claire says, happy to take away and have a conversation on that.
Councillor Sear.
Oh, good job. I came for replacement. Thank you for good report. I gave it my colleague about take time for you to answer a report, because I am the head of trustee on this center. It used to be the old library in Mablethorpe, but now a community hub. For past couple years, they have issue with leaking on the roof onto the building inside. And they asked me, so like to say, who to contact, who to get in touch with. I be allowed circle they have. And they say, oh, somebody came and looked at it. They say, no, it's not mine, so and so. So you talk about a property building apparently that building belong to county council. Okay, because it's an old library. So we should be look after whatever damage, like leaking from the roof, come inside, and that's a community hub. How to get hold of people to deal with it, like my colleagues say, you're a little bit slow. These carry on over 2 years, and so far, no result. So I quite, you're good with, I give a hand. You have a good report, everything good, but in my thing, you need a human to answer the high direction. But I know people work from home, whatever, but because you don't communication from one person to another, before you work in the office, you can talk to that colleague, oh, this is my thing, oh, I can pick it up now, you pass the pole to pole. And is for I feeling, if people not lecture to technology like I don't do email occasionally. I have somebody to help me. I cannot read on laptop, so I have a paper, so I can look at it. And some people in area don't have internet, don't have all that. And you talk about Blue Bus, that center, they have the volunteers sitting there to help people to get the application for the Blue Bus and the boat pass. But the center not being support and looked after by county council. And I think it's appalling. For over 2 years, I tried to get someone to mend that thing for that center, and the people, the volunteer who do it, and do it themselves. And that is a bit, because maybe not big highlight on like big area to be looked at it, but I think it is a bit slow in that department. So far, 3-4 people come out, get nowhere. So, I don't know. Thank you. Good job I came today.
Thank you, Councillor Sear, and thank you for the feedback. It is obviously disappointing if it is a county council building that you're referring to, that it has taken so long to get to a point where it's being repaired. More than happy to have a conversation. I know you said you're not on email, so more than happy to kind of meet you or meet the group to have a conversation. We have got a number of what we call front doors in order to get to our facilities management facility. So what that is, Councillor Sear, that's a part of our team that are there, and they're responsible for the repairs and maintenance of all of our county council properties. There is a phone number you can ring, there is an email you can use, and various bits. So there's a number of ways to get into that, but I'm more than happy to have the conversation with you in order to try and kind of resolve the issue as well. Thank you.
No, somebody can, my husband can use the email, but it's my point is, we've been to that, contact people, send email, they come out. The officer, the local from Skegnet, whatever, come out, or local girl say, oh, I live in Mablethorpe, so-and-so, they come out. But no further anything to resort it, like, I don't know what to say, like a bit slow from that department in that point, but it's a leak coming in more damage on it. So that I have conversations, somebody pulled me up in council chamber, say, oh, I got email from so-and-so from your quarter center, can you feedback? So we did, and nothing happened.
Councillor Sear, if you can take that offline, because it's a specific issue which obviously officers can't deal with in here. I've got one, and this is a very brief question. With the Gainsborough and Declaration of Interest being a West Lindsey councillor, could you give me a bit more information on the Gainsborough site and what the plans are?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Is that with regard to Gainsborough Marshall's yard?
Yes, it's our site there, yes.
Yes, so with regard to that one, and I am just getting some detail up on the screen here, because in terms of detail, it doesn't always stick, if I'm honest. So in terms of Gainsborough Marshall's yard, it is a lease reduction that we are looking to achieve on that one, Chair. So in terms of that, we are looking at a business case. So in terms of how we work within property, we're looking at a business case in order to reduce the space that we've got there. As I understand it, we've got 2 floors within the building, and we are looking at to reduce it to 1. Obviously can't discuss the detail because it's commercially sensitive, but that is something that's ongoing, and that is certainly the objective that remains with Gainsborough.
Thank you for the clarification, because it wasn't clear when reading the reports. That's appreciated. Seeing we've given that a thorough debate and going over, I will move to the proposal, which is the board endorses the detail contained in the report, and that I ask that future updates continue to be shared with the board on a biannual basis unless an urgency in consulting with the board is identified upon completion of the programmes. I am happy to move that recommendation. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Sear, thank you very much. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's unanimous. So I'll take that as such. And we now go to item 11, which is the fellow Scrutiny Committee work programmes, which you will find on page 117 and 134 of the agenda pack. Is the board's primary responsibility to oversee the work programme of other scrutiny committees, ensuring satisfaction with each committee's overall work programme and planned activities. Rather than engaging in detailed discussion on specific items, the report provides us with the updates and activities undertaken by the Adult and Community Wellbeing Scrutiny Committee and Health Scrutiny Committee for Lincolnshire. So I'll ask that adults, if they could present, and then over to Health Scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just refer to the board, to pages 120 to 125 of the report. Past activity. Since the last report, there have been 2 performance items considered by the committee, which I'd like to highlight. In each case, the committee has seen high levels of performance by adult care and public health against the set targets, which the committee has congratulated. Similarly, adult care and public health are reported to our June meeting, recorded a balanced financial position on an overall budget of 185 million. As part of the discussion on performance on the 4th of September, the committee began to explore some of the possibilities of AI, supporting the technologies which both clients and customers and staff use in social care. We are planning to have a demonstration of some of these items following on from our forthcoming meeting. Finally, in terms of past activity, I'd like to highlight the adult social care item considered earlier this month, see page 122, a 33% increase in the number of safeguarding referrals last year is substantial, but only 13% of these referrals were converted into a full safeguarding inquiry, meaning most of the referrals, often made by partner agencies, were inappropriate. We look forward to a report in March next year on efforts to reduce the number of inappropriate referrals so that staff can focus on those inquiries regarding that need attention. Future work programme. I would like to report the following changes to the work programme. The 16th of October 2024, Care Quality Commission representatives from the Care Quality Commission have not confirmed their attendance on the 16th of October, so this item will now be programmed for the 20th of November. I suspect it might get delayed again a bit more with some of the issues going on with CQC at the minute. They might be having a bit of a revamp. An item on housing-related support services has been added on the agenda for the 16th of October. This is a pre-decision item due to be considered by the Executive on the 5th of November 2024. And on the 20th of November 2024, the item on short break procurement is now coming forward to the committee on the 25th of January 2025, but that still leaves 6 items on the agenda and is wait to see what Care Quality Commission says. And that's a very brief summary. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Marfleet. I will now pass over to Councillor Wootton for the report into Health Scrutiny.
Thank you, Chairman. I refer to the committee to pages 126 to 133 on the agenda pack. Past activity. GP provision. On the 15th of May, the committee considered its regular update on GP provision. While a did not attend rate of 2.7% is lower than the national average, it means that many patients in Lincolnshire could have used that appointment instead. This will remain on the committee's radar. Since May, the General Medical Council has announced the result of a ballot of GPs. who gave their support for something called collective action. Collective action, in effect, means that GP practices may limit some of their activities. One example of collective action is that clinical staff limit the number of patient contacts to 25 per day. As GP practices can opt into and out of collective action at any time, it is not easy to track its impact, but we are looking forward to the GP item in December to see the latest position. Section 106 funding for healthcare. Page 127 refers to the committee's interesting discussion on how GP facilities are supported by NHS funding. There is reference to a letter to the Secretary of State emphasising the importance of Section 106 funding and suggesting that Section 106 funds could be used for other healthcare facilities. On 24th of September, a positive reply was received, which thanked the committee for its suggestions and referred to an expansion of services in GP settings to cater for an ageing population, and made reference to future plans for neighbourhood health centres where a range of services could be provided in one location. Hospital services in Scunthorpe and Grimsby. As stated on page 128, the committee submitted a request to the Secretary of State to intervene in proposals for service changes at Scunthorpe General Hospital and Diana, Princess of Wales, Grimsby even. No reply has been received from the Secretary of State, but as it took 2 months for a reply to a letter on a Section 106 planning, it appears that there is a 2-month backlog in the handling of correspondence. The future work programme, I would like to highlight a couple of items. 9th of October, item 2 in the list on page 131 is currently titled Mental Health Inpatient Pathways. This item will be focusing on the number of inappropriate mental health patients placed in acute mental health units outside of Lincolnshire. NHS England operates what is called a zero mandate for patients placed out of area in these units. I understand the report will include initial plans to reduce out of area placements. 6th of November, item 3 in the list is a non-emergency patient transport, which was only considered earlier this month. See the report on page 130. We will be seeking detailed assurance on how both the ICB as the client and EMAS as the provider are going to improve performance against the service delivery principles. Similarly, we will be looking at their plans to improve patient feedback, which is a key part of the current contract, but so far relies on a relatively small proportion of patients providing this feedback. 4th of December, items 2 and 3 focus on the pharmacy services. Pharmacy First is a national initiative encouraging patients to visit their local pharmacy rather than their GP practice for minor ailments. We would like to see how well this is working in Lincolnshire, as there are already pressures on pharmacies. Secondly, at various times we hear media reports of certain prescription medicines being unavailable. Although this is a national supply chain issue, we are keen to know how these shortages are affecting Lincolnshire patients. That's the end of the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you both for that. I will move to the proposal that we thank both of you for the reports, and I move that the board is satisfied with the work undertaken and that the board endorses the work programme of both committees to date. I am happy to propose that report. Thank you, Councillor Sear. You've beat me to it. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's unanimous. It's now on to the final item of the agenda. When I can get this on. This report is on pages 135 to 146 of the pack and provides an overview and contents of the work programme of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Board. This is not an item for debate. However, there are some changes to the work programme, so I will hand over to Chiara to explain these further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just to highlight, there has been an addition to our January agenda, and that is the Enterprise Resource Planning System Business World Move to the Cloud. This is an item for pre-decision scrutiny, and the decision will be taken by the Executive on the 4th of February. In addition to this, I would just like to add and highlight that I have now captured that the Green Master Plan is going to form theme of the next transformation programme update, which is due in April. Thank you very much. This concludes my update.
Thank you for that, Chiara. I move the report be noted with the caveat that all necessary amendments identified since the publication of the agenda be incorporated by the designated scrutiny officer. Can I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Sear. That is the item noted because it's not for debate. I will end the meeting and say thank you very much for attendance and all those that contributed, and to officers as well, and wish you all a safe journey home.